on YouTube. For our many fans online.
Yes,
Hi.
sitting in the audience.
All right. All right. We're just waiting on Howard, but we have a quorum, so I'll call it to order. Call the advisory committee meeting to order at 7:34 p.m. I think Howard, he had told me he was going to be a little bit late, but we can start, I think, with the minutes and just kind of get those out of the way. Why don't we start oldest first? Does anybody have any edits to the 12-14 minutes?
Claire, did you get my edits from earlier today?
Yes, I did. Thank you very much.
Yep. So Tim had a small edit on line 76 to remove looked.
Okay,
And then
this is for the 14th.
for the 14th, yeah.
Okay,
And I did not have any additional edits myself. Adam or Marcy, did you guys have either?
No.
Is there a motion to approve the 12-14 advisory minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, not all those in favor. Adam,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Tim.
Hi.
All right. Andrew's aye. 4-0.
yes.
Anybody have any edits to 12-20? And I think there was a line that Tim added to line 44 to say, including adding a new line in the school budget to support such activities. And then the only other edit I had, Claire, was on line 15 and 19, Pellegrino as P-E-L-L-E-G-R-I-N-O.
Shame on me.
All right.
Okay,
Anybody else had any other edits? Oh, there's Howard. Oh, wait for Howard to come over. Hey, Howard, we're just doing the 12-20 minutes. Did you have any edits?
I did not.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the 12-20 advisory minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second. All right, roll call vote. Adam,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Tim,
Hi.
and Andrew's aye. 5-0. And one more. Does anybody have any edits to the 125 minutes?
in addition to the ones that Tim sent me today.
Correct, Tim. I don't think Tim had one on the 25th, but
Correct.
I had one on line 18, Claire, just advisory members with an S.
Okay,
In line 38, instead of HET hired, I think it's get hired, GET.
I'm sorry, Andrew, what line was that again?
Line 38,
Okay,
I should say, it says leaving to het hired. I think it should be get hired.
okay.
H to a G. Anybody else have anything else? Going once, going twice. Okay, is there a motion to approve the 125 advisory minutes as amended?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Adam,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Marcy.
Abstain. I wasn't there that day.
Okay, Tim.
Hi.
All right, 401. We gotta
Okay.
get back. We're rusty on the roll call votes because we were in person last time, so we got to get. We will have a bunch of them tonight, so we'll get.
Hey, these virtual meetings look pretty good for me.
Yeah. All right, Claire, thank you for sticking in for that part.
Oh, okay. So guys, just so that you know, I'm on vacation this week. I'm down in Florida, so I'm gonna stay on a few minutes, just so that I don't miss anything, and then I will listen to the recording. So thanks very much.
Thanks, Claire.
Have a good vacation.
Thank you, Claire.
Well,
Happy
I'll be back
travels.
Friday. It's 4 nights, Howard, so it's a short trip.
Better than none.
Enjoy the sun.
Yes,
right.
thank you.
Meeting schedule. So we got an email today from the select board chair. They're looking to do a joint meeting with us and the planning board to evaluate the pros and cons of the MBTA Communities Act, in Southborough, whether or not it's worth complying with it or not. They threw out 3/7 and 3/21, but I think they're leaning towards a 3/21 meeting. So I just wanted to see if that date would work, or either of those dates would work for either group.
1 second, please.
Sure, no worries.
I closed the calendar for the meeting, so.
That's a good point. I should open my calendar and see if I can even make it. Okay, I could do either, but 3/21 works for me.
Is it 3/7 or 3/21?
3/7 or 3/21.
I can also do either.
Okay.
All right, let me check. Uh, 3/21 would be better for me, but
Okay.
I could make 3/7 work.
I think they were leaning to 3/21, so why don't we just say that 3/21 works for you?
I think I can do both.
All right.
The week in between, I can't, so they did that well, so. Hang on, checking the other calendar. Yeah, so far both of them are open, so.
Tim, any preference or issues? You're on mute if you're trying to talk. All right, well, Tim might have stepped away.
No, nope.
Sorry.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can now. Now we can't.
I said no preference.
Okay. All right. I was thinking, I think we should probably have one more meeting at least before town meeting to hear from probably the other article sponsors that we want to hear from. I thought maybe 3:15, but we could do another day in between now. Actually, I can't do 3:15 anyway. What am I talking about? I'm not going to be in the country. So maybe not that date. Want to do next week? Would that work? The 8th? Or we could pick a different day.
I can do the 8th, the week of the 13th. I'm gone the entire week, so that would be awesome.
I can do the 8th.
Adam or Tim?
Yep, I think I can do the 8th as well.
Cool. Tim? You're on mute.
7:30 again, or 7?
Yeah, I mean, I think 7:30 is probably good.
Okay.
Unless there's a real preference either way, but
Just
Do
blocking
you
it
send
off.
invites out?
I haven't. We're just trying to see if it works for people first. So Tim, does the 8th work for you?
Seems to.
Okay. All right, I'll send out an invite right after the meeting. And then
Post it in time to get it on the town website. Right?
yeah, we just has to be 48 hours, so we got plenty of time. I'll probably post a meeting for around noon on the day of town meeting. So on 3/25, they have a room for us in case we need to do any last minute votes. So somewhere around noon. For that day, there's a break between 5 and 7. We can use the room and order dinner if people want to stay, or if people want to go home and come back at 7. You know, either way is fine, but I wanted to throw it out there as an option.
Is the 7 to 11, is that a given? We should assume that's for sure.
With what we have going on in this town meeting, I would say it's a pretty good chance, and we're hoping we don't have to come back for another day.
Yeah, what are we at? 44
4 articles.
articles?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we're at least those 2 sessions, if not the next day. So. We'll be optimistic and say it's just those 2 sessions. But,
Yeah. So we can discuss it later, but if people wanted to stay there and have dinner, that's fine, or people can go home and do whatever they want. Update on FY24 budget. We'll obviously go into more detail, but we're right at 6% right now, with the 12% residential shift and a -4 CIP. There's a 2.3% increase year over year in expenses, which I actually think with inflation as what it is actually a pretty good budget. It's just the shift's going to kill us again. And I think we'll cover off on the warrant and the placeholders there. Let's see, Jim yet. So why don't we dig into the budget and the warrant? So let me put on the screen the latest budget. All right. So the latest overall budget is 6.02% increase for a single family home. And as I said, a 2.3% increase in expenditures. Still have a healthy levy balance, which is good.
what's the date on this budget?
This is today. So this is the one that's technically this is the one in the folder with
I'm looking at the 224 and it's gone up. So I'm just switch.
correct. Yeah, so this is the ad today. There was a change in the Algonquin number by I think 11,000.
And is this representative? I had to leave that meeting, that Saturday meeting that we had a little bit early. Where did we land as far as representing the budget from a level service versus voting on things that were above and beyond? Is this like all in everything if we were to fund everything everyone asked for?
This is all in everything, and a lot of the things that were non-level service were removed.
They were, okay.
So I think the only piece in here was and whether it's level service or not is kind of debatable because they did do it this year, was the extra hours for Council on Aging. But they are doing it this year. It's just paid for out of a grant. So it's pretty much level service. It's just moving which bucket it goes into. But the deputy chief is out of here. The EDC piece is out of here. So all the stuff that was kind of a big increase has been removed. So as far as, basically on that Saturday meeting, those were the sticking points that we had concerns about. So personally, I think they covered off on everything that I was looking for. I mean, could we find an extra $100 here or there? Probably. But I think that this is a good exercise, and where we ended up at 2% cost increases with what we have going on these days with inflation, I think is pretty good.
And where is this posted? I only see the 224 budget. I don't see a 3-1 budget in the file.
In the folder, in the FY24 folder.
Dig in, hang on.
So it's
When I can watch your screen, I'll find it later. Just
Yeah.
just trying to keep
I'll-
up.
I'll send you this latest one because I did add one extra number in this one. So this is the latest of latest.
Okay.
Brian was sick today, so I had to take over ownership of the file. But the only real change was we could talk about it now, I guess, is the we did get estimated cherry sheets, which is the aid and expenses that we get from the state. So it's
Yeah,
just
I saw the email on that come in, just,
correct, and it's not a good story, and so we're gonna have a understand from the state why Southborough has such a small increase year over year versus our surrounding and comparable towns. I can't for the life of me figure out why it would be that way, but I did put that in here, so hopefully that's a conservative estimate. Hopefully it only can go up.
Andrew, can you remind me, was it the economic development budget that I'm having trouble getting to that folder? Where they were asking for like a full-time.
Correct. So that's
and-
the EDC budget here. They were
Mhm.
asking for increasing their part-time resource to
Yeah.
full-time, and as you can see, it's, their budget's going down, so that, they obviously took that out.
Okay. So is that something that we're going to bring to town meeting?
No, they've pulled their ask basically for this year. They might bring it up at a fall town meeting possibly. But it's not going to be in this annual town meeting.
Okay.
Andrew, so the position that remains is the 19 hours, right? That was
Yep.
always there. Okay,
Exactly.
that's what I thought.
And, I'm happy to go through in depth of any of these individual budgets, but I think they're all where we were at in the Saturday meeting.
Okay. Yeah, that was the only one that, as I was thinking about it more, it did feel like it merited maybe additional conversation possibly, but in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish, I understand why it's not in here. But I do think there could be a lot of impact to the town if you find the right person and that person is prioritizing the right things.
Yeah, yeah.
So more work to be done probably for them to be ready to pitch that. But that was the one that intrigued me the most, that I would have liked to have maybe had some more discussion around.
Yeah, I think it still warrants having a longer discussion about how do we want to handle grants? Is it a consultant? Is it a staff person? Do we need a full-time? What do we want to do? What's our strategy there going forward? So I think it's kind of like the discussion of Board of Health that we,
Exactly.
before we approved something, we wanted some kind of strategy document and a real vetting of it. It was kind of a late addition. So I think, if we could do that now, even between now and fall town meeting, that's great, but at least it's out for now so that we can move forward with this. You did
And-
see the email from Jim. Oh, sorry, Marcia, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add that in trying to figure out, in absence of EDC minutes that have not been posted, I was trying to figure out sort of what I mentioned that day, which was their strategy. So I started listening in on the personnel board meetings on that functional statement. I would encourage you guys to listen to that if this comes up again in the fall town meeting. Jason Malinowski had a really great analysis and his thoughts on this, which was grant writing is embedded in several different current town employee functional statements or position descriptions, but those don't seem to be current duties, right? So he felt that warranted a further look as well. So that was a bit of information that I wasn't aware of at that Saturday meeting that seemed to be very relevant to the discussion. So I appreciated Jason bringing that forward, and I thought that was very valuable.
Yeah, there's a lot of grants that are done by our staff that it may be not even part of their responsibilities, but they've taken it on. I know Melissa's done a few herself and has done a great job. So that's where it gets a little tricky of, if they're doing it and it's, they're good at it, and a grant writer might not have the expertise. Does it make sense or not? But again, we can cover that off this summer.
and Adam, to your remarks, I think we all agreed, and I won't speak for everyone, that the position was valid and worth considering. I just don't think it was thought out enough of how that person would be shared. And there was no clear direction of how that position would be shared. So it wasn't ready for prime time, basically. So I think we all agree it's a valuable position that we should look into. Just it needs to be sussed out of who they report to and the responsibilities.
Yeah, I agree. it wasn't ready. It was an intriguing proposition. I would love the opportunity to work with them to bring it to the next town meeting and hopefully bring it further along, or ask them to dedicate more time to bringing it further along. I completely agree with Andrew on holding them to the same standard that we did with the Board of Health. And so it's one that, again, it just really piqued my interest. So, maybe I can follow up with them.
But I think there's also questions of who do they report to? I liked the idea they reported to the town clerk or someone rather than the EDC. And again, that's part of the discussion of the organization and how the hours are split and how it's paid for. So,
Yeah, and what their responsibilities are, because we had debate even on that.
right.
So,
I think
Okay.
it goes back to, I think we talked about this summer about one of the goals I had was having like a grant calendar and a responsible next to the grant, each grant. So if we worked on something like that and there was, 10 grants where we didn't have a staff person or a volunteer that was going to work on it, and then that kind of helps drive, a list of grants that person might be working on, and that'll help drive how they're allocated depending on where the grant sits. But again, I think that's a longer term discussion we need to have.
Can you refresh my memory on civil defense? I don't remember that discussion.
So civil defense was part of fire. And that's basically for Neil Spacey, who's our emergency management coordinator.
Mhm.
That has always been paid out of the fire overtime budget. But we started last year working on trying to really define the number of what it costs for him to do that role, and move it into that bucket, because that's where it really sits. Especially because that role doesn't have to be in fire. So
Mhm.
if Neil ever left, we would have no budget to pay for somebody to do that role unless they were in the fire department. So Chief Achilles kind of has been monitoring what that cost is, and that's kind of the true up of what the actual cost is.
I just didn't remember the discussion. That's all. So thank you.
Yep. The other one, you saw the email from Jim Haggerty on the town clerk budget. I think he's hopefully going to join us tonight to talk about that reserve fund item and about his warrant article. But if anybody has still any outstanding questions on his budget, remember the big increase was the iMedia cost for town meeting.
Which I understand, but don't like.
Yep. I mean, I think
we have to do it this time, but for future meetings, there is no reason we can't train the appropriate people to use the systems we have, because they are actually pretty decent systems. And
Yep. No, I would agree with you.
I think there's another challenge. I guess there's a staffing issue over at SAM, but hopefully that'll get resolved. But I think we have to do it for this meeting, and we can discuss that when the time comes. But I think for future ones, there's no reason we can't have that in-house and be done properly.
Yeah, and I actually think that Sam should actually, if they can't do town meeting because they're understaffed, should maybe chip in to pay to have it outsourced. But that's not necessarily within our bailiwick. That's my personal belief.
Well, they could hire people. I can give them. There's plenty of people out there who work as a subcontractor for the meetings and get it done too.
Yeah. So but I think for my personal belief that leaving it in there for Jim's budget in case it isn't resolved by then, and hopefully it is, and we don't have to spend the money. But I don't want to have to do a reserve fund transfer again because we're not ready by whenever we need to do it.
Well, I don't know if I disagree with that, because if it's there, there's no urgency to get the training done. If the money's there, then they might just sit on it rather than. I almost would prefer we force them to get trained people in there and have them come back if they can't and explain why.
Yeah, but it's training and it's equipment, right? It's the cables and the cameras and the screens and so like at town meeting, they're setting up the gym and the auditorium and so it's a little bit of both. I'd love for them to be able to do it in-house, right? And use the money that we, $200,000 a year that we give to Sam and redeploy it and make sure we get it in a good space. But I just don't want to commit to having that fixed by whatever date. But we can hold that one if we want to talk to Tim, to Jim when he gets here.
Yeah, let's
we
hold
can
that,
vote on
talk
it.
to- Let's
Okay.
talk to, let's see what he has to say first.
Yeah, we could just basically hold off on voting on the whole budget until that.
Mhm.
That's not gonna slow us down. We could probably start voting on some of the articles if that works for people. All right. You guys still see the budget on the screen?
Mhm.
Okay, let me switch. Okay. Here's the so this is like the cheat sheet of each article and what the select board voted on, and then what would our vote be. Articles 1 through 3, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17 through 23, and Article 33 are what I think Mark was proposing to the town moderator to put into the consent.
Yep.
So select board voted on all of those kind of just in lump, but I don't know if you want to vote on them one by one or discuss any of those. Let me filter to those. If anybody has any questions on some of these, we can certainly postpone a vote on any individual ones, but I figured I'd try to do what select board did and vote them in bulk.
You've got a typo on line 13.
Okay. I wonder if it is. I wonder what the actual warrant says.
If I caught the typo, you know it's bad, so. What was so bad?
I'd be fine on voting on all of them together.
Okay.
I'm just skimming over them just to
Yep.
see.
No, please take your time. So it's not the actual capital budget, right? It's just the capital budget lease payments for the old leases. The free cash for Parkerville Road, which is just basically the pass through, right? We get the money from Eversource and we just have to pass it through free cash.
Pay it, yeah.
Capital maintenance fund, yeah, that's the usual one, which looks good this year. Now they move some of the stuff that was in there into the operating budget. All right, anybody want to hold any of these or?
Hang on.
Oh, sure.
Yes, well,
Yeah, so far, no.
and it has no library bond. Yep, I'm good with all of those.
All right. Is there, so who do we want to, who wants to be the motion person and who wants to be the second tonight?
I'll be the second, I guess.
I can volunteer, Andrew.
Okay, thanks. It just makes
I'm
it
not
makes
the
it
best,
faster
but
when we
I'll
have
do my best.
one and the other. Okay. So
Okay.
Marcy, can you, is there a motion to, for advisory to support articles 1, 2, 3, 10, 11, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 33 on the draft warrant from March 1st?
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Roll call vote. Marcy,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Howard,
aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. So it's a 5-0. Thank you. Look at that. We're third of the way done. That was easy. Now
Hopefully
we get
the
into the
meeting will
hard
go
stuff.
as smooth.
All right, the ones that we haven't voted on yet. Okay. I thought we'd SAP and BOS hasn't voted on yet. Budget we'll do that once we talk to Jim. Water, I think they're doing a couple extra changes to that just to make sure that they have the correct rates there. So we'll hold off on that one. Capital, we can review the capital if people want to vote on that. That makes sense. All right, let me put up the capital budget. All right. Okay. So it should be, I think, this 713 if I'm correct. 708.
Not moving.
Let me double check. What does it actually say on the warrant? Okay.
450, 15, 148, 20, 55, 20.
March 7.
Need a calculator.
Keep going. Yep, just missed it.
Okay.
Yeah, 708.
Okay, because it's okay, so it's all of them put together in here. Okay, so should be these budget ones plus the ambulance fund. Well, let's just do it as printed in the warrant. Road maintenance, sidewalk maintenance, security cameras, police cruisers, medical equipment, ambulance, fire stretcher, PPE. None of those are a concern to me. Anybody have any concerns with those ones? But a lot of them have been taken out with the ARPA funds, which is why it looks smaller.
I don't remember the discussion on security cameras for the library, but yeah, it's not a huge number either, so.
I think this is who's entering an external installation security will allow for video only recording and who's coming and going from the library. Okay. Is there a motion for advisory to support Article 7 as printed in the draft warrant of 3-1?
So moved.
Second,
Discussion, seeing none. Marcy,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Howard,
aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Andrew is aye. All right. 0. Police and fire radios, Article 8. So we did talk about this during that Saturday meeting.
Yeah.
Sounded like they needed them. I thought the cost was high, but I don't know anything about police and fire radios, but I'm willing to support it. Anybody else have any other concerns?
No, I like that by combining them, they got the discount, but I agree. I don't know what a radio costs these days, but yeah. I'm
I
sure.
have faith in Chief Achilles is ordering what he needs and it'll get the job done. Okay. Is there a motion to support Article 8 as written in the draft warrant of 3-1?
So moved.
Second,
Marcy,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Howard,
aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Andrew is aye. All right, making quick work of these. Breakneck Hill remediation. This is one that we just came in, I think, and we haven't really discussed it.
Yeah,
I don't know if we want to discuss it now or have it at a later meeting, but I'm happy to at least tell you what I know.
When was the property purchased? This is a while back, yeah?
Yeah, well, I don't know how much it was a couple million, I thought. I
Sorry,
don't
when?
remember what breakneck was, what cost to buy.
He asked when.
Oh, when was it purchased? I have no idea.
It's a while, right?
It's been a while.
Hmm.
I want to say at least 10 or 15 years. Sam, do you know? Oh, Kathy's there. I'll allow Kathy to talk. Hey, Kathy, you should be able to talk now. Unmute.
Hello.
Hello.
So, I actually, was that Tim that asked the question when?
Yep.
So I actually lived over there, on Davis Road, and John Butler and I were the first two residents on that road, and when Ray Davis was still there. So we basically took the property, Tim, as a tax lien. So, you know, again, hindsight's 2020. It was in the 80s that we did this, so we've had it for a long time. So the select board last night basically said we haven't had enough time to vet this proposal. We thought it was going to be closer to $1 million, and it's, you know, more than twice that. So we would like to take it off, or definitely postpone it to the fall. All we need to do though, we need to check, we need to read the order again, and which I read today, and I think we can based on the timing that's in it. But we need Melissa Dan. We're going to ask Melissa Danza to confirm that we can legitimately move it to town meeting, which of course will be probably October. And then give us, you know, everybody the summer to really vet this, because it's a lot more money than we thought it was going to be. And there's just not a lot of time to vet this between now and this town meeting. We've got so much on this warrant anyway. It just didn't seem to be prudent to bring this up now, because it really is dropping this in at the last minute.
Yeah, Kathy, I did talk to Melissa today.
Yeah.
She doesn't think that we can wait till fall.
Really?
Yeah.
Did she not say, well, what date are you talking about? Because it says 180 days in here, which is 6 months. And that would be what, March 25th, September 25th.
Yeah, we don't know what date the fall town meeting would be.
That's why I said it'd have to be before September 25th. But it says 180 days, Andrew, from the date that the state basically comes back with a plan. And I don't think it's this. I think they've got one more thing to do. Did she not ask you that? Did she ask you the date of the town meeting?
No, the fall one, no.
Yeah, because I would have think she would have wanted to know that, given what this says. So maybe I just read it wrong.
She basically said she was concerned with the timing. Not that it couldn't be done, but she would be worried that we would be right up against the ACO if we didn't approve it at the annual.
Yeah.
And I asked her, you know, just so everybody knows, I asked her some quite pointed questions about what would have to be done, you know, why would this be so expensive? But basically they're estimating, but it might be less, that we're basically going to have to take out 2 to 8 feet of the dirt and pay to have it disposed of. And because there's some asbestos containing material, it has to be done in a proper way by a DEP certified, et cetera, at prevailing wage, which is why it's so expensive. There's a chance that they might find it not as dirty and they can screen the dirt and leave it there. But this is kind of a worst case scenario cost. Again, it's bonded, so it doesn't really hit the tax rate this year, but it's obviously a lot bigger than what we thought it would be.
Yeah, but this can engender a long discussion at town meeting. I mean, there's no telling where this will go. So Andrew, maybe you and I get back on the phone with Melissa tomorrow and really understand what the timelines are to see if they fit, even if it's tight.
Yeah, we can postpone this to our next week meeting in terms of voting on it, but I thought I would at least bring it up for discussion.
Yeah, because
And
we'll
I
have to
assume-
decide this week whether we're going to do it or not.
I assume that's a not to exceed number that, like you said, it could come in.
Exactly. I mean, it hasn't gone out to bid, right? It's basically the estimate from our vendor or consultant that says, we think you're going to have to do this based upon the testing that has been done.
Right.
In worst case scenario, we are estimating this cost, but it could come in less.
But it could come in more? No, I mean, that's what I was going to ask what Howard asked, because it says, or any other amount. So
Yeah, that's not going to go well
So doesn't this, why do you even need the 2.2 million? This is basically just saying whatever it costs, we have to approve.
It's a very good point, Adam. It doesn't say not to exceed, does it?
Right.
So that even gives me more pause. So I think that maybe, I mean, you guys do what you want to do, but if you just don't vote on it yet, I mean, you'll still have a chance to vote on it before town meeting if it does go forward. But I'm really hoping that we can postpone this.
Yeah, so Kathy, we won't vote on that tonight, but can you check on that or any other amount? It seems fishy.
It does, doesn't it? But,
You know, we'll talk about it at our next week's meeting.
Yep.
Or we can vote on it again on the 25th, just before town meeting, and take a position on it, so it shows on the screen.
Yeah.
But we'll punt that one till later.
All right, you can put me back.
Okay. All right, there we go. Picnic Hill, St. Mark's agreement and St. Mark's Street Park funding. Does anybody want to cover off on those two? I mean, Kathy's here if we have questions, or do it as a separate meeting.
Let's do it.
All right. Let me put it up. I'm gonna bring Kathy back because she's gonna probably need to speak to.
Yes, especially as I missed the last selectmen meeting that this was discussed, so.
Ew, 12 and 13.
12 and 13, yes.
So, as we all know, these two relate to the completion of hopefully the completion of the Pocket Park. So the plan is the Article 12 needs a 2/3 vote, Article 13 needs a majority vote. So if Article 12 were to fail, we'd probably just pull or definitely postpone Article 13 because there'd be no reason to do Article 13. So we'll start with 12. So the plan of the select board is to go to the podium and present basically a presentation, make a presentation that goes back through the history, hopefully fairly quickly, so that all the facts of how we got to this are laid out for everybody to hear. There'll be some new people at town meeting, especially people who are coming for the Algonquin article, which is next after this one. So that hopefully all of the facts are there for people to make a decision. Obviously, the select board wants this to pass. We've worked very hard this past year to try to listen and deal with the complaints that we heard at last town meeting, and then some that we heard thereafter. So we'll go over that. This one, these two, of course, will probably have a whole lot of discussion associated with them, including a couple people that are rather vocal right now in opposition. So they'll be there and they'll stand up and say things. And a lot of what they have been saying in the blog and when they show up at people's houses are without facts. They were saying things that aren't true. So I'm gonna present this because I'm the only person that was not on select board last year. And as you recall, I know I had a problem with this. I can't remember what everybody else in advisory thought, but my issue was a pretty simple one. And I think it was maybe everybody else in advisory too, or majority, which is select board didn't take the time to take a look at whether this project was the best project for the limited amount of road funds that we had at that point. We'd spent so much money on the town portion of the downtown road project that we had not done any regular road work since 2019. So it was time to get back to that. So the downtown project had cannibalized that money for 3 years. So I just didn't understand why they thought that project, which initially was going to cost $1 million, was the best way to spend the town road money. I didn't think they did anything nefarious. I understood why they did the license agreement, which was to try to jumpstart the process because the grant was going to expire. They had to use the money. So that's why they did it. Of course, that backfired horribly as far as what people think. They think that was a purposeful attempt to do an end run around town meeting's authority to basically approve land transfers. So I'm going to try to deal one at a time with the biggest issues that have been raised. That's the biggest one. The second one is related, which is work was being done on land that the town did not own. Third one was we might be trespassing on sacred ground, that is burial grounds, as far as where the park was going to be. Fourth one was people didn't want to spend any money on the land St. Mark's was going to get, let them take care of their own parking lot themselves. So that's going to be the main issues. And then the park. The conclusion was after this past year is that most people, at least the people who got involved, which again is always a minority, right? Big minority. They want a fairly simple park, not expensive. And so that's what the next article is all about, is to show the town that we aren't going to spend any more on the park itself than what the grant was that we got. We were proposing to spend no more than $250 and the grant was $290. So that's kind of the gist of what the plan is. We'll publish this letter, report, whatever you want to call it, in myself or ahead of time so people have a chance to read it. But it's truly having to prove a negative. It's having to play whack-a-mole, because the things that keep brought up in many cases by a couple of people are just factually incorrect. So you can say they're wrong and then they call you a liar. So it's going to be an interesting set of articles. I'm hoping it's going to go better than I think it's going to go, but I'm not very optimistic that this will go smoothly given what happened at last town meeting. I think that's going to be mild compared to this one, given how a couple of people are acting right now.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
I think my personal on Article 12 is I look at it as a land acquisition, and what we're getting is I think 33,000 square feet of land that's connected to the library property and other town property that could be used for library stuff or anything in the future for really landlocked, an old piece of road that once the project is done is not needed. So I think just on that, it's a valuable, trying to put aside all the conversations and things that happened before. I look at it basically from a land exchange of more valuable land to the town for less valuable land for the town. But that's basically how I see 12.
So the project, it's kind of gotten lost in all this done. The project was conceived several years ago. This was always on Karen Gallen's to-do list, which is to fix the water problem at the corner of 85 and St. Mark's Street. You guys may remember the ones that were on advisory about a year and a half ago during a meeting, Andrew in real time pulled up a Google map that showed that the water problem existed before that stone wall that's there now was added by St. Mark's. So a lot of people want to say that wall caused the water problem. It didn't. It may be exacerbated, but no one knows that. No one can say yes or no what the wall did or didn't do. The water problem was there though prior to that. Andrew Dennington took a picture of the intersection on this past December 31st. It was a day where it was warm during the day, then got cold at night. So the water that was there turned into ice. So it was a big ice rink as you drove across it. So we'll show that just to show there really was a problem. So that was one thing that she wanted to get fixed. She also wanted to fix the water problem in the library once and for all. So she started doing that with the downtown project. There were pipes added that sucked water away from the library. And then she finished it with the pipes that are now underneath the land that we're trying to swap for. So that part's done. Those pipes are there. And our consultants, our engineers, VHB, do believe that water problem has been solved for at least most storms you could contemplate. They do, how when you get insurance, if you're on the water, you always say, is it a 100-year storm or a 10-year storm or 20-year storm? So they have basically designed that for a 10-year storm, one that would happen only every 10 years. So it should be okay. We knock on wood, we've had no water in a few years. The last time we had the water, it cost $600,000 to fix the library. So the library board of trustees has said that there's not been a drop of water in there since all this was done. So that was the second problem she's trying to fix. The third one was if you're going north on 85 and you want to take a left on St. Mark Street, it's more than a 90-degree turn. It's about a 135-degree turn. And the safety equipment, the fire engines, the big ones, have trouble making that kind of hard turn if they're trying to get to Choate Street, the street where you run down next to the Choate House and all the neighborhood in there. So the new street would be a 90-degree angle. You just make a left turn and go straight down it. So it would help that too. I don't think that was the primary impetus for doing this, but it was thrown in there. Chief Achilles agrees that he wanted that to happen too. So that's three things that were needing to be done. And then the state had all this money in the Shared Streets grant. Karen tried to figure a way to apply for a grant and decided that building a park and swapping the land would let her do this project that she's had on the radar for a while and end up with a park too. So that's the genesis of the whole thing. So that's what I'm going to try to spit out in a short time, very efficiently, effectively, so people understand it, and hope that 2/3 of the people in the audience think it's a reasonable solution and the better solution than doing what? And we're going to say we don't have a plan B. If the land swap fails, we're about to sign the memorandum of understanding, which will get rid of that old license agreement. So we have no right to get on that land. We've messed it up. It's a big, ugly pile of rocks and dirt. There is one sentence in the license agreement that says that if it were not to pass, we've got the right to basically smooth it over so that we don't leave St. Mark's with a mess. But that's going to cost money. We've built a road there. We've got this big pile of rocks. So if someone's saying, well, what's the cheapest alternative? You compare giving back the $290,000 to the state and what it would take to do enough that St. Mark's wouldn't, have something that they would have something similar to what they had before. We don't know what that last part is. We're trying to figure that out. Andrew may help me figure that piece of it out as far as at least an estimate of that. What we will be able to say is if we go ahead with the park, we know we're not going to spend more than $250,000 on the park. That's what the next article is. And there is a cost that we will have by town meeting of finishing the work that is currently embedded in the E.H. Perkins contract that was signed to do the work for the park. So we're trying to get that number from them right now because the contract included 3 projects. And so we're trying to get them to tell us how much is left as far as the park piece of it goes. So we can honestly say this is what the cost would be to build the park compared to this would be the cost if we were to try to just undo what we've done. But remember, we've cut down trees. We took down a small wall. So those would have to be, those are going to have to be mitigated anyway. So those would have to be put back in some form or fashion because the planning board is going to require it. So
And we have to give back the money as well, right?
yeah. So I said, so 290 goes back. So that's the 290. And then what is the cost of trying to restore it in a way that's appropriate, given we have truly made a mess of their parcel there. And then you also say, well, look, if we approve this, we at least get a park out of it, a nice park. The working group has really worked hard this past year to come up with a plan to please call it the plurality of people. It's hard to design by committee, believe me, if you've watched it. It's very hard. Everybody's got their own idea of what it looks like, but I think they've kind of gotten there at this point as far as what they want to end up with. They don't have all the details worked out. So there is going to be a conceptual plan shown at town meeting that I think the working group is going to have voted on, and with a majority vote, at least, I don't know if it's going to be unanimous, to basically say this is where we think you should end up. And then the details will be added after town meeting if the land swap is approved.
All right.
Okay,
Why don't we go
it's very
around?
important. Very important. Everybody here understands the following. We almost signed the MOU last night, but there's now a couple more tweaks, which is unfortunate because St. Mark's has already signed it. So we got to get them to re-sign it for the 3rd time, but we will. So I'm hoping next Tuesday, we will actually sign the MOU. So at that point, that dreaded, hated license agreement is totally null and void. It's gone. And we can honestly say to town meeting and to residents, we don't have a license agreement anymore. It's done. We heard you. We got rid of it.
All right, thanks, Kathy. Why don't we go around and if anybody has any questions, Howard, I'll start with you.
For me, the board is different than my personal opinion. I personally don't like how it went down and mistakes were made, whatever. But for this board, our purview is financial responsibility to the town. And it seems that at this point, building the park is the most cost-effective solution. So for me as a board member, that seems to be the logical way to go for our purview is what's fiscally responsible for the town should we build in the park. And I'll leave the rest of it off the table at this point for this vote. So.
All right, Marcy.
Thank you, Kathy, for the explanation. I was with you last time in voting no on the article at last town meeting. My question is, what happens if the cost of the park is more than the 250 being proposed?
So we have talked, Marcy, so we've talked to VHB, which is our engineer that does the landscape design, and they have told us that they are confident that they can design a park under 250. So they just have to keep going back to the drawing board. We're saying we don't want to spend more than 250. That's all we're going to spend. So they have to keep tweaking it to, we know, and if we get a bid that's more, we go back and tweak it again. So we just keep going to, we have something that is under 250.
I feel similarly to Howard. I think in the ultimate best interest of the town, we have to do something. And I know the select board has tried very hard to navigate a very challenging situation. My only other question is, hold on, I have it written down here, sorry. Is the ultimate argument that we're spending $540,000 for the park because we already spent $290 plus we're going to spend another $250? Or is the $290 going to be the pitched at town meeting as that was part of laying the groundwork as part of Shared Streets grant? I mean, that's where I get confused, because it sounds like we're saying that to finish the park's going to cost $250, and we're forgetting those people, like you mentioned, that are saying cheapest alternative here is to turn back the $290 and walk away, which really, in a sense, is because that's cheaper than $540. So is that going to be maybe explained at town meeting? I think that's where people will get hung up.
Well, I'm listening to what you guys are saying, because if you guys have a question, that others are going to too. So, I've kind of worked out in my head what to say, but I'm going to keep tweaking it till I really think it's clear. So, there's a concept in the business world of a sunk cost.
Right.
In other words, it's already done. We can't do anything about what's already spent. You're not going to get it back, right? So therefore, you say, okay, what's the least worst alternative at this point? That's another concept in business. You may not have a good one, but what's the least worst one? And if you look at least worst as the least expensive, I believe, Marcy, in the end, we're going to show that finishing the park is the least expensive from this point on. It does not take into account what was spent prior to this. I'm talking about what we spend from this point on.
Right. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think the back of the envelope math is roughly say with the 250, 750 total for that area.
Okay.
Right.
Thank
So
you
we
for
bet
That sounds
clarifying.
right. Yeah, that sounds right. That's exactly that's what it
You mean
was to begin with. That sounds
To
right.
restore it, you mean?
No,
No.
for the whole stuff,
The
to
whole
take down the
thing.
trees,
None of
to
it
do the
doesn't
work,
matter.
to do the
Moving the
park.
road,
So we
moving the road.
spent basically, 500 or so. We have 250 left. But as Kathy said, a sunk cost. So if we don't do it, we've already spent 500. We're never getting that back. We then have to spend 290, giving the money back to the state.
Right.
Then we have to spend a little bit of money, just kind of smoothing it out, so it's not,
Right.
St. Mark's doesn't come after us because it's a disaster. So
Well,
it versus the 250 to finish it, keep the 290 and have a park. If that makes sense.
It may be worthwhile for select board to have in our sort of a pitch to people that feel like we're almost spending, in total, $700,000 for a park that nobody really wanted. But I agree with Howard that it is where we are, and we will, move forward with what we have on the table here.
Yeah, respectfully, we had a similar thing with Main Street, right? It was free, the town paid for it, but you just said, what I was saying in the beginning, you just said all of our other roads were tied up and we haven't done anything. So it wasn't free. We used money that could have went somewhere else to do that project. The free money concept is wearing thin, I think, and town is getting wise to that. So.
Well, remember, Howard, with the Main Street project, it was really a state project, something called TIP, Transportation Improvement Project. And they paid $7 million of it, but then we did have to make a contribution. So we did a piece, they did the majority. So we got a lot of work done that was leveraged with the state money, which was a big draw to some people.
But it wasn't free.
No.
But that's how it was sent to town. And Karen sat up there and says, well, it's free money. We get it all back in grants. But it really wasn't. And that's, and again, the thing was the other roads suffered while we did Main Street, and people are seeing that. I think it just adds to and we saw it at last town meeting. I was reminded and somewhat shocked of how much distrust there is in our government at the moment. And, frankly, this project isn't helping that. So we need to be clear.
I would say I wasn't there, but I would assuming what Karen was talking about is that the town portion was paid with Chapter 90 funds, which again is quote unquote free, but those are funds under our control that we could have used for other stuff, right?
Right.
Exactly.
That's exactly right,
That's-
Andrew. That's exactly right. And Howard's phrase just a minute ago when he said the distrust of government at the moment, this is a fairly new thing. Town meeting was never like what it was last year. I never remember a town meeting where it was just so, the distrust of the select board was so palpable almost all the way through it. So it's unfortunate. I had intended to write off after advisory. I really loved advisory. I'm a financial person at heart by far. So but I thought it was time to go. I thought I had worn out my welcome. And I really never intended to, never, ever had given 1 minute of thought to run for select board, didn't want to do it. But then I thought, something, this has got to get straightened out. And I wasn't on select board, so I could at least bring maybe an objective voice to it, plus one where I had criticized it. So I really didn't think that I thought it was going to be a little bit easier than it's been to get to the point we are tonight. I don't know what the vote's going to be. I really don't. So I'm just hoping we've done enough to convince people that this really is the better choice of our two, which is finish a park versus trying to somehow restore it to what it was and pretend we didn't do anything. Remember too, even if that happens, we own those pipes underneath the St. Mark's land. So we'd have to figure out a way to deal with that too. So it really does, I think, complicate it if we don't get this land swap done. Not to mention the fact that St. Mark's has done nothing but cooperate all the way through. They paid for the archaeological dig because it was their land. They didn't ask to do this. Yes, they're going to get a park across the street from their school, which I'm sure they'll use. But they didn't ask for this. This idea that we did this to build them a parking lot, which is one of the things that we have to continue to say, no, we didn't. It's just wrong. Another thing that changed between last year and now, we were originally going to at least grade their parking lot, their new parking lot, but we're not doing that anymore either. We're not spending a penny on the land that they're going to get from us if this gets approved. They have to take it from there as is.
And again, they still get something out of it, which I'm okay with, right? It's
mutually beneficial agreements are good.
Yeah, they get a nicer parking lot, and of course it's contiguous to where they play ball and stuff. So it's a good parking lot for them. And the one they already have a parking lot there, but it's not a very good one. So they get a much better parking lot. That is true.
And it's a parking lot that they had said, at least initially, that if they're not using for an event, and there's this event at the library or something, that they would let us use. So I think that's a good.
And for anyone using those fields, because a lot of town sports use, again, it's beneficial to all. That's not, like I said, for just be prepared that the attitude towards government has been. You say last meeting was worse. It wasn't as bad the one before, but I don't think it was good either. I think it's been growing over time, the distrust, and I don't know what the reason for that is, but be prepared. But as far as this board is concerned, like I said, for our vote here, it's financial. Take anything else out of it. So
great,
but that's me.
Marcy, any more questions? All right, great. Adam.
Yeah, good discussion here. I think I might be the opposite of you, Kathy, who said you're a finance person at heart. I think I probably shouldn't say this being on the advisory board, but I'm more of a marketer at heart. And I wonder here, I share the same concerns maybe that Howard has as far as the reaction that you'll get in the room. And I completely agree with you on there's a lot of history here and it's all sunk cost. And how do we position the town for success moving forward is what I'm most interested in. And I almost wonder, Kathy, if what do you think the consensus is of citizens of this town that won't be at town meeting, what do they want to see happen? They may not know the history the way that you do or that we do. If you just make it a blank slate, which is really what we're working with right now, as far as forgetting about the past, just to position it for the best possible scenario going forward with what we have to work with. What do people in town want? Do we know? Do they want a park? Do they want to see it look better than it is today and have the parking lot fixed? I would imagine they want something better than what it is right now. And how do we bring that voice into the room when they're not going to be there? We know they're not. We know how many people show up to these town meetings. And so I worry about the loud voices in the room that you mentioned that are going to be in opposition to anything just because you're putting the word St. Mark's on this article. So
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head, Adam. That sentence is the root of part of the opposition. If this park had been proposed to someone else, we probably wouldn't, someplace else, we might not be having a discussion tonight. So that's definitely part of the issue, is where it's located. And I don't know what to do about that. It is where it is. We're going to have, I think, an unusual crowd at this town meeting. So you'll notice the order of articles. If you, Andrew, if you can go down and show them the next one. So the next one is the vote on the debt that needs to be incurred to redo the Algonquin athletic facilities. So I know that the school is trying to make sure they have a really good turnout of parents, Algonquin parents, so that this gets passed. So we ordered these articles this way on purpose. So that crowd would still be there when we talk about 12 and 13. So we should have a little bit different composition of town meeting than we normally do. Every once in a while, you have an issue that brings out a lot of people. For example, when we did the 84 Main Street preservation restriction, I believe there were about 700 that came to that one. When we approved the public safety building years, we did that. There was a lot of people at that one. Main Street brought out a lot. So if you've got an issue that people truly are interested in, you'll end up with not just the normal crowd that comes, you end up with a layer on top of that. So we think we'll have a layer of, set of parents that have kids in high school. And may even not have heard a thing about this. So that's why I need to explain it clearly. They may be going, what are you talking about? I see that dirt, but I didn't know what it was. So I'm going to make sure that we explain it in a way that those that are there for the first time actually hopefully understand it. And this idea that any person can say, nobody wants a park. I don't see how you can say that. I like parks. I think most people like parks. Parks are healthy for cities and towns to have. Maybe this is not the best place for a park. I don't know. No, we never went that far. It was going to be here. So I'm hoping that, the idea of a park does appeal to at least a group of people that are sitting there for the first time and say, well, I like the idea of having a park.
I would agree with you.
Thank you, Timothy.
Why wouldn't you want a park next to a library?
Yep.
Yep.
I don't, I mean, people who, I've heard this said before, nobody wanted this park. We have a museum. We have a small playground behind the Pilgrim Church. We have a library. So I am confused why a park is not a desirable thing in that area, but perhaps people have solid reasons for that.
And Adam, talking to some like the kinder group folks, the idea that it could be used for kids story time, which a lot of the parents take their kids during, with Thursdays. That was one that would be a great use for that, right? So that was one selling one that I heard that people say, I like that concept just for that piece, but.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine if you go around town and ask people to choose between the alternatives that we're talking about right now, whether it's a park or what it looks like today. If you remove all the history, which is really the main reason why I think people, regardless of what you put in front of them as a solution, they're going to say, I don't like that because I don't like the baggage involved with this whole operation.
Yes.
Making a decision for the wrong reason. And so if we can galvanize the town that's not been invested in this the way we are around putting a better solution in place than what exists today and bringing their voice into the room. And I appreciate, Kathy, what you're saying about there might be a bit of a different audience here. But I feel like whatever we could do to strengthen the voice of the people who are actually going to be able to take advantage of this park and would love to have a park and don't care about how we got here, to be completely honest, the better it is going to be for this town. And we can move forward and put this to bed already.
I think a good analogy to that, Adam, is the Main Street project. If those that were around then remember, one of the biggest criticisms of the project was we were going to create, I-95 through the middle of Southborough. It was going to be a real freeway. And I believe now, if you went back to those people, that they would, and I know a couple have said, I was wrong. It's great. It looks good. It didn't do that. I think I'm glad we did it. And I was wrong about what I thought the look was going to be when we were done. So I'm hoping a couple years down the road, we're going to have a nice park. And people really are going to like it, and they're going to have forgotten about all this, and they really like it. Now, Michael Weishan, who is a landscape architect, has submitted a concept to the working group that shows some other things we may be able to do down the road. We just can't afford to do them right now. He's got a nice amphitheater built in underneath the Flag School. He's got some other things that we could do. So we could add to this as time goes on. We just can't do it yet. We need to, be very efficient with the money and get this thing done, and then hopefully let things calm down. And then maybe later on, if we can solicit donations to try to make it better. But one thing I do say, and those that understand this piece of it, will get this. Do you want 2 piles of dirt in the middle of Southborough? We already have one that's just sitting there and has been for years and years now. Do you want a second one right in the middle of Southborough? I don't.
Great. Adam, anything else?
No, I'm done. Sorry.
Great. No worries. Tim?
I don't really have anything to add. But I think the people who are against this are against it, and are not going to change their minds, and don't really want to have a debate. There's a lot of anger, and I'm not certain how to resolve that, Kathy.
I know. So Tim, the good news is some of those that were outspoken, who do go to town meeting a lot, but who mean well and want to do the right thing, they are going to support this. Mr. Hamilton's going to support it. So some minds have been changed that are influential at town meeting, and I'm sure they're going to get up to the microphone and they'll say, wasn't great how we got here, but as far as what we should do going forward, this is the better solution. So we will have some support from people who were adamantly against it. Remember what Al said on the May meeting, which is, okay, select board, you're in a hole, stop digging, which I guess is a pretty good metaphor for what's going on here. But anyway, so there will be some that will come forward. I believe Patty Fiore, who was one of the most vocal opponents, I believe she's going to support it. So there will be people who will get up and say, didn't like it last year. I think that they have done what we asked them to do, and I will support it now.
That's good.
Any other questions, or you guys want to put this to a vote?
I'm ready to vote on this.
Yeah, I think I am too.
My only concern on the vote is there's no numbers under 13.
Where's the 250?
It's not.
It wasn't there. Where'd it go?
It's not there now. Is my
work in progress.
Well, why don't we put in there the dollar amount into our motion?
It is 250. I don't know why it's not there. I didn't realize it wasn't there. So it's 250.
That's fine. I just don't want to vote on something, we
Yep.
can put into the motion, just, that's
Do
it.
you want to vote them together? Because they're kind of tied. Yeah, you can't do one without the other. Okay, so is there a motion to approve Article for advisory to support Article 12 and Article 13 in the draft warrant, with the caveat that Article 13 funding amount is not to exceed $250,000?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Tim,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Marcy,
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. 5-0, Kathy.
Thank you, guys. Andrew, I think you guys should be ready to have someone stand up and say advisory. Please explain, why you support this. I
Yep.
wouldn't be surprised if
Yep.
that happens at all.
I
Hey,
think any of
Kathy.
us can do that, so.
Yeah, Kathy, it's going to be really important that no incendiary citizens show up to this meeting and cause problems. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and we had to deal with that today, Tim, at the townhouse, and it's being dealt with.
Excellent.
Thank you, Kathy.
Okay, thank you, guys. Good night.
Kathy, is there anything else here, select board wise, that we want Kathy to opine on before we send her back? Hopkinton IMA. Do we want to talk about that one, or
Yeah, why don't we talk about that one? That's a good one.
26?
Okay, so this is a really good example of where nothing was required to be brought forth to town meeting, but it was felt by John Butler and I that we should bring this forward to give the town a chance to weigh in on the potential water connection with Hopkinton to the town of Southborough. So long story short, Hopkinton has a water problem, a serious water problem. It's not just the PFA chemical. There's a lot of things. They basically get 2/3 of their water through a big well in Hopkinton. So they don't use a system. We use the MWRA. So they've got a problem. They got to do something about it. And they have engaged an engineer, which is our engineer, water engineer, to basically recommend what to do. And the best solution of all the solutions is for them to connect to the MWRA through Southborough because of the roots of the pipes, et cetera. So Karen Galligan worked on this for a long, long time and came up with a set of plans that would do this. John Butler, who everybody knows, by the way, used to be on advisory for like 30 years. He has spent a lot of his time on advisory looking at water stuff. So he knows a lot about the water system in Southborough. And so he called and said, "You want me help on this one?" I said, "Sure." Anytime you get John Butler to help weigh on it, you usually end up with a much better project and proposal. So he and I worked on this one and sat down with the select board and came up with a set of requirements that would have to be met by Hopkinton if we were to agree to do this. And it wasn't a negotiation. We basically said, if you want us to do this, this is what has to happen. And we did tell them we were going to bring an article forward to town meeting, so town meeting would have a chance to ask questions, weigh in on this. So the article that we agreed to bring forward is the one where we would ask for an independent audit of the proposed engineering, given that the proposed engineering was done by a person who basically worked for both towns. So we're going to have an independent audit that comes in and takes a look at it, and we make sure that we've really got a strong set of plans to do the engineering. So that's where we are right now. We're in the process of getting the IMA drafted. The terms of the agreement are that Hopkinton basically pays for everything. We're going to have to make some changes to our water system, which Andrew Pfaff is well aware of because the tank that's going to be changed is literally in his backyard. It's going to have to be increased in height, but we're going to end up with a much better, robust system that's going to be what's called a single level pressure system. Right now, we've got a high pressure system and a low pressure system. We've got 3 tanks in Southborough right now. So these are changes that should improve our system also. It would accommodate the ability to bring this water through here. Hopkinton's going to buy as much water from MWRA as we are, probably even more. Hopkinton's bigger, but only 2/3 of their town use it. So they're going to pay for everything. We're going to have a much robust, more robust water system because of it. And then they're going to give us $1 million on top of that to be used for other future unrelated water projects. We've also got in the agreement that they have to pay for all costs that are associated with pumping their water. So the electricity, the depreciation on the pipes, et cetera. So for those that didn't work with John Butler, he's quite erudite and he's very good at spreadsheets. So he's got this complicated spreadsheet we put together that will be the basis of their invoice. when we start pumping the water. Now, we already have an agreement with Ashland that's like this. We have an IMA with Ashland to provide emergency water for them. That one did not go to town meeting. Select board totally did that one a few years ago. I don't even remember it. So I don't think advisory was even told about it. I was so surprised to hear about that when this got started. But that's how the last one went down. But again, given the nature of town politics right now, from the very get-go, we decided that we needed to bring something forward to town meetings so the town meeting had a chance to weigh in on this. So it's, it's a small piece of it, and Hopkinton is going to reimburse us for this too, just to be clear. So we pay for it. We hire the auditor. He's our auditor. We do the contract, and then Hopkinton has to reimburse us for whatever the cost is. So we're not going to be out of pocket this. But we
Kathy,
do.
just to clarify, that's not what they put in Article 26.
Okay, let me see
Just-
it.
It's just to hear a report from the select board. So there is an article that, basically will allow the town meeting people to vote and ask questions, et cetera.
Who put that in there?
I don't know. I'm just saying that's technically what's in here.
Okay, that's not right.
And again, this is just a draft hold. It's not the final language, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, gosh, I don't know. So that's got to come out real quick because I know where that came from, and John and I rejected it. So I haven't read this since they got put in there. I don't know. So that's not the article. The article is what I'm saying. It's going to say up to $200,000 is the number to basically hire an independent engineering auditor to audit the final plans, which will take about 1.5 years, just to be clear. But you want to get the auditor hired up front so he can weigh in stages. So if something needs to be changed, you don't have to change the whole thing at the end of it. So that's a plan. I have no idea, Andrew, where that came from.
Yeah, this is the latest one I got from Mark, which has your votes in it. So.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you for pointing that out. And then I don't know where the 250 went either, because that was in there too. So
So I also don't know if he added the votes to a little bit of an older article.
well, we didn't vote on this one last night, so we didn't even get to it. So we didn't look at it.
Right. So
So
do
I
we
do-
want to
Let me just keep going.
hold
So
this
they-
one off?
Yeah.
Voting, but we can ask questions to Kathy while she's here.
Yeah, and so the plan is to have the IMA totally negotiated before town meeting, maybe signed, maybe not. And it's going to be dependent on that article passing. So even if it gets signed, it says nothing happens unless that article gets approved by town meeting. But if we get it done, we at least know we've got the deal cemented, so we can say this is the deal that people understand.
I think as long as it costs us nothing, it'll fly right through. I don't think, shy of a little minor inconvenience of some road work and maybe Andrew's backyard, but
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, no one in this town is more impacted than me.
mhm.
I will be able to now see the water tower today. I cannot see from my property. The trees completely obscure it. Now I will be able to see the top, 50 feet of this water tower from my pool. I am not happy about that, but I do think in the best interest of the town and the best interest of our neighbors, I'm willing to suck it up and support it.
But they're going to put one of those,
Cover trees.
they're going to put a tree on top of those fake trees that you see on cell towers to try to hide
Yeah.
them.
Just put a
But,
TV screen on it or something,
But Howard, they're going to spend about $3 million in Southborough on the water system. So we're going to get a much improved water system plus another $1 million. So it's not that it's not going to cost us anything. We're going to have a much more robust system and another $1 million to spend. We've got 3 projects that are on the list to do that cost $860,000. So add some inflation to that. That's where we got our $1 million. So it wasn't a made up number. It doesn't mean we have to use them for that, but there is $1 million of pending water system projects that we could use this money for.
And as someone who lives near one of the other water tanks and has very low water pressure, I'm hoping maybe that gets resolved. But again, I think it's actually a win for the town. So I don't think there'll be, and that it costs nothing. I think should go right through.
And if somebody says, why'd you do it? We truly did it because we're trying to be a good neighbor. How would we feel if we had poison water?
It's the right thing to do.
So that truly was the basis for this. If we can do it and not cost us anything, why wouldn't you do this?
Yeah.
Kathy, are we going to know? So go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay.
Are we going to know about the Corderville Road project? I think Mimi brought that up last night in her public comment. I thought it was a good point.
We're
Are we going
not,
to do the Corderville Road and then it's going to get dug up with this project or no?
I don't know the answer to that as far as timing. Marcy, we're going to wait till the new DPW head is hired, and we have no one even being interviewed right now. So that's still a while down the road. That's going to be their project to basically take over and figure out how to do. Cordova Road definitely needs to be done. So part of this agreement is not only do they have to repave that side of the road where the pipes are going to go down, they've got to repave the whole road. So we didn't want a half road repave. So that's part of the agreement too. They have to repave the entire road that is used. And it's Parkerville, it's Southville, it might be Porterville. But John, we're going to talk about the roads at town meeting. We're going to explain which roads are going to be affected. So John Butler will probably do this presentation.
And Marcy, I
Thank you.
remember talking to Karen before she left. I think it might have been when we were meeting with her beforehand or something. But I think I asked her the same question, and she said the part that they're doing on Corderville is basically up to Southville. So it's really the roads are going to be done on Southville, so it shouldn't impact the Corderville. Like basically the Corderville project is going to stop where the water project's going to end. That's what she told me, right? I'll wait to see what John comes back with, but it didn't sound like it was going to be too much of an overlap.
So I have a ridiculous question. If we're going to disrupt Parkerville to do this work for Hopkinton, don't we have money we're appropriating to repave Parkerville that we got money from Eversource already? How does that tie together?
That is Parkerville North, not Parkerville South. So that's the Parkerville north of Route 9 that we've got the money for.
And this is Parkerville South we're going to disrupt again. Okay. Just making sure. I just saw, we saw money Parkerville. We're getting money to redo Parkerville, to rip it up, to redo Parkerville again, right?
Good point. And another thing too, Andrew will tell you, he's got a pressure problem at his house right now. And we believe that his pressure problem is going to be improved with this new system.
And Howard, as an individual, I did make the request to the select board that, as part of this project, whether they use the $1 million or not, we should ensure that, anyone that has low or sub 30 PSI water pressure, which is kind of the, what the minimum submission has,
Yep.
which is probably you included in your area as well, should be made whole and get to at least 30 if they can, right? That was a hope I had as this project, if they can engineer it to do that. And if they need to use the $1 million for it,
Mhm.
it might be a good use for it. But that was my request for the whole town to basically get over the limit. But that was my personal request.
So some people suggest that part of this problem that Hopkinton has is a result of unwise and irresponsible housing development over the years. We talk about being a good neighbor. My concern, I don't want us to have to rip up our streets if they continue to do that.
So Tim, there's a cap on the amount of water they get. So we know right now what the peak needs are of both towns. So that's written into the agreement. So if they ever need more water, there has to be a new agreement. So we think I've heard that too.
Yeah.
So I've heard that too. And I guess my response to that is, well, it's not the people that live there's fault for that. But anyway, we've got that in the agreement. So there is no ability to get more water than what's in this agreement.
I don't want to have the state, because they're basically holding, the state as a club. If you don't work with us, then we're going to go to the state. State's going to force you. I don't want that to have to pop up every 5-10 years.
Yeah. So the agreement's 25 years. We've got the ability to get out of it with a whole lot of notice to Hopkinton, like years. So because they would have to, you can't just say bye-bye tomorrow, right? So we could terminate the agreement. Both sides can terminate, but there's a big waiting period to be able to do that on both sides. We've got even a bigger one than they do, because it'd be such a important thing for them to have time to replace this.
Yeah, I can see that. I just don't want them to put in massive, whatever, housing complex, mixed use complex, whatever, and then come back to us and say, oh, you know what? Yeah, we need this.
Yep.
And
And we
we
thought of
heard
that.
the
So
same-
I think we've got it covered with the limit on what amount of water is part of this. There's only so much they can get with this agreement.
And Tim, I brought that up when John Butler was on, and his understanding was that this was contamination from, the well was contaminated from PCBs or something. It wasn't, he didn't know any reason that it was because of building it. It was just a factory or something. They don't really know, but it wasn't, he didn't feel it was overbuilding. But I share your concern. If they continue to build, do they need more water? And according to John, who again did his homework as he always does, he felt they had enough water based on their next 30 years or something. So, and water usage he was showing was actually going down in most communities. So
Ours too.
ours too. So I brought up those concerns when we met with John. So like I said, I think this looks good for the town. It gives us improvements, and it was good for them as well, right? For Hopkinton as well. So we're helping out a neighbor, and we get some intended benefit on top of it. So
I mean, I know it sounds stupid, but I do think this is a win-win.
yeah,
I don't think that sounds stupid.
Okay.
just makes us
Howard,
better.
Howard maybe, but not you, Kathy.
Ah,
Thank you, Tim.
Sorry, Howard.
it's all good.
So nice to be back with you guys. All right, so is that it for me? I can't think of anything else, Andrew, I could add to this. There may be something, but I'm sure.
No, I think that's it. We'll hold off on voting on it till you clean up the language.
So I will say this, there's 3 basically tree related articles. So, the 2 have come back. This is the 3rd time. So Select Board did vote 5-0 to support the tree article, which basically repeats state law. And then we did not take a vote on the scenic walls, but there's clearly not support in Select Board for that. So we just said town meeting. So I think that was, if we had voted, I think it was going to be a 1-4 vote, possibly 2-3. But it wasn't going to be a strong second vote. So that one probably, we're just going to wait to town meeting and everybody just vote individually in that one. But that one was not supported.
What's the overwhelming, is it kind of, Kathy, I mean, I know I was at the meeting, but is it kind of like, I'm not really feeling it? Or is there something that's really driving the strong opposition to the scenic bylaw?
The scenic roads bylaw, the opposition is pretty, this one's easy. This is not a complicated article, is that those that don't support it just don't think it's needed. What the gist of it is, if it gets passed, then planning board has jurisdiction over all roads as far as trees and stone walls that are in the public right of way. Right now, no one has jurisdiction over the walls. I mean, you still can't tear them down. You don't own the property, right? You just don't have a lot of arrows in your bag as far as somebody does that. Trees, Select Board already has control over the trees in the public way because they're the tree warden, which we didn't know till recently. By passing this, then that means that the planning board is basically our co-tree warden. So that anytime, somebody wants to take a tree down in the public way, they've got to apply and go in front of a joint meeting between planning board and Select Board to get the tree approved to be taken down. And then with the walls, you go in front of the planning board if you wanted to do something to a stone wall that is in the public right of way. So that's the gist. It seems like it's a lot more maybe bureaucracy than what we need. Would be the reason to not support. The reason to support is because it just stops it. You want that. You want to make sure that we do everything we can to protect our, really old, valuable, lovely stone walls. I believe there's 60 something trees or roads that would become scenic roads if this gets approved. In other words, they're just saying take them all, and that way we don't have to worry about defining or trying to pick out what truly is a scenic road because what you think scenic, I don't. If you remember what Marty said at the May meeting, he goes, "Hey guys, I know where I live and it's not scenic." I think you got to get over that as far as
that's not really the point, is it?
No,
Right?
it's not. I said you got to get over that. I mean, that's a cute soundbite, right? So if you really just want to make sure that there really is a process and a penalty if someone were to tinker or tear down a stone wall that's in the public right away. This is not your own stone wall. This is the public right away stone walls. Then you would vote to support it. And if you thought that maybe this is a little bit overkill, if you were on kind of that side of the street, then you'd say, I am confident that no one's going to tear down a stone wall that's in the public right away.
I think on the tree one, it should be pretty cut and dry. I think part of the problem was it was presented in an incredibly confusing manner.
I know. And
And
so
there were
I
a lot of
agree, Adam.
questions that could not be answered or articulated in a concise, clear way. And I think that's what the big problem was, to be honest with you.
Well, there were some definite problems, which answers my question, and Kathy, you may not know this being it's planning board. Has anything changed from the last time to this time?
The answer is yes. You remember your chair was one of the more vocal critics of the tree article. And the drip line issue was
That's
one
the
of
one.
the main, one of its main points. They've
Mhm.
gotten that out of there. So no longer does anyone have any jurisdiction or tell you what you do on your own yard, even if that tree comes over into your yard, overhangs from the public right away.
Mhm.
You can do what you want to do. You're not going to get put in jail if you do something under that tree. So they've gotten rid of that. Although Andrew, I actually haven't read it to make sure that it's out of there, but we were told last night it is, that they listened on
I
that one.
think it is the only part that's kind of still in there is that like if you did something on your property to poison and kill the tree, you could still be held liable, but there isn't anything there that like if you cut the roots and the tree died. Right, so it's more like, if you, and I think the same goes for if you poison your neighbor's tree, you could be, there's a possibility you could have some liability. So I don't think it's that part, Howard, in terms of what you're doing on your own property.
Because the drip line was real, because I personally have a tree that I don't want to cut down, but it has some branches that are 30 plus feet long and hang over the road, but the tree is nowhere near, and they were saying that claims it. It's like, I want to trim that so cars don't hit it and not have to have them do it.
So-
My other thought though is, in my understanding is everything in this bylaw is already already covered in the state law. So do we really need it?
I think to me, Howard, that's the threshold question. And if you listen last night's meeting, I said, I think you've got to stand up there and answer that question. If it's already there, why are we doing this? And I still haven't heard a real great answer to that. Andrew, you heard what you said last night. Andrew was there last night. So Andrew spent a lot of time talking about this article, especially the fines that could be levied if you don't do what you're supposed to do.
So Howard, I kind of got them to put in Mass General Law, there's maximum fines. It's 500 or 300, depending on which chapter you're going under. So they added that in. But I didn't want to leave an open-ended ability for the tree warden to basically assess a fee. So I asked them to put a maximum there. I think in terms of the other questions the town meeting had, or the one that Howard brought up in terms of if it's already in Mass General Law, why do we need this? I know that they're doing a presentation, and one of the slides is going to be each section in which Mass General Law relates to. I think the only difference is the purpose is the only thing that doesn't exist in Mass General Law. But then to your point, if it's all in Mass General Law, why do we need this? And I think the real thing is that the thought process is in Mass General Law, but it elaborates on it. Right. So I think it starts from there and it adds, right. But I don't think they specifically have done a good job in defining where it departs from Mass General Law and adds something, right? Like the process of you need to replace a tree with a native species, straight species. That doesn't exist in Mass General Law, but they don't explicitly say we added this. So the mechanism of doing it is Mass General Law, but the additional language is not in Mass General Law. If that makes any sense.
Hopefully that'll be, as Adam said, the presentation will be a little stronger to do that, because frankly, the third bite of the apple on this one, it's getting a little long in the tooth. That they spent a huge amount of time on this. That
They have.
What else could they be spending their time on at this point?
I know.
Comes up. So
I agree.
they feel
Don't forget-
strongly about it, but
One of the other questions that had come up was how to determine if it's in the public way or not, right? Because all the streets are different, and then it's like you look at your plot plan and how does that work on different streets? Like that to me was one of the other hangups. I don't know. I haven't read this version to see if any of that changed. I didn't hear that brought up last night,
I
Andrew.
think it's the same, Marcy. I mean, I haven't memorized it, of course, but as they said in the meeting, contact the tree warden designee, and he'll come out and he'll let you know, which is true. But what if he's wrong, and you still cut down a tree that he's not going to surveyor, right? He's not going to do a legal survey of the property to see where the line is. So, I guess we just
Well, I
have to
think
go
it's a
on
very-
faith. But it's one of those. Okay, so he says it's not in the right of way, and you cut it down, and then they come to find out it is, are you then liable? I don't know, but
I would
I think
imagine
it ties
not.
into the, if it's not that much different than what we already have in state law, like why would we even put something in place that raised those questions, right?
yeah, I mean, even today though, if you're gonna cut down a tree that you think is on your property, you should check and see if it's on your property.
Of course, but I think that's just, if you're presenting a bylaw that has these questions though, built into it.
Correct.
It's a little different than saying, oh, that's state law, I'll just have to check it out. So it's sort of like the burden of proof's a little higher. And I think it just leads to the points that everyone else is making, that having sort of a version that would show specifically where it differs than what's already in place would be helpful.
Yeah, so this is, I agree. It's time to get this one done one way or the other.
All right, well, I think, is that everything we have for Kathy?
I am still shocked about the language in 26, so I've got to send an email. Okay, so I'm going to say goodnight to everybody.
Great, thanks, Kathy.
Thanks,
Good
Kathy.
Night,
Good night.
Kathy.
All right, thanks, Kathy.
See you soon.
So we'll hold off on 26. Jim just joined, so why don't we bring him over? Good evening, Mr. Haggerty.
Good evening. How are you?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, thanks. Just finished up a marathon session with the
With the scouts.
scouts.
I think
Everything there
you're,
was to know
you're
about-
a
everything
little
was
bit hard to hear you. I don't know if it's because your mic is up.
What now?
Much better.
Yeah, a marathon session about how to find bank robbers.
There you go. All right. So Jim, why don't you start just we didn't vote on the budget just so we could talk to you and see if anybody had any questions since we knew you were going to be here.
Sure.
You want to just talk about your latest budget submission?
Sure. In the initial package, I was looking for $5,000 to rent a high-speed tabulator. And then when I talked to Andrew up front, I said, I'm being greedy. I just can't justify renting that for $5,000. So I pulled that out. I then talked to the vendor and came up with an interesting idea that if we purchase 2 more bases, we can actually double the throughput we have at town meeting. So to spend $2,000 for 2 more bases, it makes a ton of sense. We'll double the throughput for the central tab facilities before the big elections. And that's going to save us a ton of time. So to spend $2,000 now versus renting $5,000 a year, that's a home run. That's a plus to what you had the last time. And
Jim,
I retained
the purchase on those, I think was what, 25 or 30,000. So, 2,000
Exactly.
purchase versus up to 2,500, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a home run. Yeah. I retained, last time we spoke, I was on the fence about whether to include iMedia to cover audio and video at the town meetings at $8,000 an event. I have included that. It's the right thing to do. Sam is not capable of doing what we need done for these events. That's what it comes down to. Simple as that.
So I appreciate that for this meeting, and yes, it makes sense. I would hope for the future that we have all this equipment in the town, that auditorium is very well equipped, Sam is very well equipped. It's a matter of training and perhaps personnel, but obviously for this time we have no choice. But I would hope in the future we could find a way to get the appropriate people in there and trained and not have to have that expense that we've already have the equipment for. So.
Oh, and I agree with you 100%. And I think there's going to be a serious discussion between the select board and the directors of the nonprofit group about how we get the $180,000 a year. I'm with you 100%.
And the school, because some of that equipment is school owned, if I'm not mistaken, right? The in-house system and the wireless microphones.
Yep.
It's just a feed from the school system into the SAM system. And that's easy. They should, anyone in AV should be able to do that. half hour or less.
Yep.
It's a matter of training and I think the challenge is us, the school no longer has someone who knows how to use that auditorium. So I think there's multiple people that need to be involved with that, but there's no reason that can't easily be solved and save us that expense, because it's an expense that we shouldn't have to incur. So.
And I think, Jim, one thing we talked about before you joined was, I mean, personally, I'm okay supporting that, but I don't want to take the pressure off trying to get Sam to do it so we don't have to spend it. Right. So I don't want anybody to fall back on, okay, we're just going to have iMedia do it. I think, it's right. I think it should be done by Sam or it's, we pay $200,000 or shift the money over for PEG broadcasting, and this is town meeting, right? I mean, if there isn't something that this is meant to broadcast, I don't know what is. So I think just, my concern or some of the committee members' concern was, if we approved it for the FY24 budget, we really want to not use it. And we want to make sure that that's clear, and we want to drive in that direction. I know we are, but we think we just wanted to kind of relay that message.
No, I'm fully on board.
And to be clear, to be honest about it, I was saying, there was a note that you were going to come to it for this meeting is on this budget. I almost didn't want to put it in the next budget, so it kind of forced you to either come back a second time or get it done. And I'm not putting that on you, I'm putting that on Sam and whatever. But I think if the money's in the budget, it gives them another year to be lazy about it. So.
Yep.
Anybody else have any comments or questions that, do we want to request Jim to take that out, or would we rather leave it in and just hope we don't have to need it?
So the next time that we would need it would be in the fall town meeting.
Fall town meeting and then annual town meeting, yeah.
So there is plenty of time to get somebody up and running, right? It's not a stretch to think that it's more than feasible.
That's not realistic. That's not realistic.
Not realistic.
No, the driving force here is personnel. It's Sam personnel. That's what it is. And it's not realistic. It's not going to happen in a short time frame.
Is the year time frame reasonable in your opinion?
Oh, sure, because the select board controls the budget and the contract with the board of directors, and they have was it $500,000 in their fund? Absolutely, it should be. I mean, we were very clear as to what we wanted. Very simple, and they can't deliver on it. It's as simple as that. Now, I understand they have staffing issues right now. Then Terry's number 2 has left to go to another job, but other towns do this, and but we just don't have a difficult conversation needs to be had between the select board and the entity that controls Sam.
Okay. So maybe we put it in for one more year and just note it for next year and hope we don't need it this year, that they can get their act together and then pull it next year. Because again, we're talking, it was what, 16,000 for this meeting. Assuming the special town meeting is one night, that's another 8, plus the next special town meeting is another 16.
You think you're budgeting what, 9 for the 2 meetings?
No, eight per town meeting here for the 8 for the fall meeting one night, and 8 for a one night annual next spring.
Okay.
So that's 16, but it was 2
Right.
nights for this one because we have so many. So
Yeah.
So that's what, 32 right there. That's
Well, it's
No.
16.
16 for FY24 and then 8 for FY23.
Yeah. Well, actually, bang up saying
10.
it's going to be 10 for FY23 because we have to cover the we're concerned about the capacity. So we're going to have to cover the auditorium as well. And it might be more if we have to go to a second night. But right now it's going to be 10 to give us coverage for the auditorium and for the cafeteria. That gives us.
We'll cover that off when we talk
Okay.
about the reserve
Got it.
fund.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I reduced the salaries for the town clerk by I took out my bylaw request for $1,000 on that.
yeah. Why did you do that? That one we weren't offended by. You
Well,
just barely get that.
No, there's a state statute that towns can accept that allow $1,000 stipend to clerks that pass the certification test, and very few clerks do it because frankly, it's a hell of a lot of work.
Mhm.
But it's a matter of pride. And I got to tell you, I'm at home now. My wife is going to cringe to hear me say this, but I asked my wife to look at it, and she said, "Isn't that part of your job?" And I couldn't, for the life of me, I could not articulate why I should get this. Now, I do an awful lot of things that have nothing to do with the town clerk. I'm going to spend a day here in March up at Holy Cross learning about zoning requirements in 40B. All right. It's because I want to learn as much as I can to help my interaction with the departments. So I do a hell of a lot more than training wise is required. But I just, for the life of me, if somebody would up at town meeting and say, why should we do this? Frankly, I just couldn't come up with a concise response. Maybe I will next year, but I just couldn't come up with a way to articulate it. I think it's the right thing to do, but I just couldn't find a way to defend it. So that's why I took it out.
Knowing all you do, that was one of the ththings I had no problem supporting, frankly, but so.
But it's one of these things.
Okay.
I didn't want to have to look silly, so sillier than what you should say, but that's okay.
All right, so any more questions on Jim's budget here? All right.
Can I just throw one wrinkle out here? Something I'm a little bit
Sure.
worried about down the future. I've added a couple $100, $250 extra in repairs and maintenance to have the lock inspection of the safe done. When I first got here, I asked somebody when the combination was changed. They looked at me funny, and I brought my tools to change the combination myself. And when I took the plate off, the gasket had turned to powder. I said, "All right, time to call a pro." And I'm worried that lock and that door might be showing its age. So I'm going to bring in a professional group from Boston to look at this to say, hey, what's the life expectancy? What should we be doing down the road? And if we ever have to replace that door, you just can't replace a lock on this. It could be several $1,000s, but that's a down the road kind of a thing. But I'm just a little worried about that.
Yeah, I think the 250 sounds fine to me at least, but I would keep in mind, Jim, John's 100,000 article. That's kind of what this stuff's for.
Great point. Yeah.
I mean,
And
it's 250 in here, but if the door
Okay.
needs to be replaced and there's an emergency, that's why we give him 100,000.
And just to decide, I don't know if you heard about the problem they had down in Barnstable at their election in November. Somebody broke the door and they couldn't get in, and they had to fill out ballots by hand the whole day. Somebody literally, there was nothing wrong with the safe, just somebody muscled the handle and literally broke it off. And they spent from until 10 o'clock at night, 8 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night trying to fiddle with this thing. And when I heard that, I asked Chief Achilles to come over, and we looked at the outside of this and said, if that ever happened to us, we're just going to get the fire department out with one of their saws, and we're going to cut a hole in the cinder block on the side, and we'll be in 15 minutes and call it a day. I mean, so if a bad thing happens, we're okay.
All right. Any other questions on the budget?
No, I think that was it.
Okay. Why don't we cover your article, right? You just have one now, right, Jim?
Yes.
Do you know what number it is?
They just changed the numbers. I want to say 32, perhaps. I don't have it in front of me. I know after the conversation last night, they're moving one forward.
I'll pull
But
it up.
I want to say it's like 32-ish.
All right, hold on a second.
It's 33.
Okay.
Yes, 33, which we already voted on.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty straightforward. You'd be amazed at all the things that are into that, shouldn't be, to try, just minor things to fix.
Yeah, they're here, I'll pull it up just so everybody can see it. There it is. So this is proposed to go into the consent, Jim, so
Yes.
we basically voted the consent.
Okay.
Um,
Great.
But I didn't realize that at the time that this was in there.
Okay.
But yeah, anybody have any questions on this? I mean, we already voted it, but while Jim is here. All right. And then I think the other part was the reserve fund transfer request. So Jim, you're
Right.
thinking it's about 10,000?
Yeah, it's 10 grand is going to cover us for the audio video piece for the tour rooms, if we have to go to a Monday night, it's going to cost us more money. Police officers, teleworkers, and audio video. So it could be a few $1,000s more.
Okay.
I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm praying that doesn't happen.
So we have, kind of historically have do two different things with these types of reserve fund transfers. We either just vote it,
Yep.
and Carla will move the money into Jim's budget, or we basically commit to a backstop up to a certain amount, and we vote it basically at the end of the year when we see, what does Jim's budget end up at?
Yep.
Right, because it's a contracted services line. So we say, if we will backstop up to, whatever it is, $12,000 in a reserve fund transfer if Jim goes over in his miscellaneous contracted services line.
Yep.
Which is kind of the direction I'm thinking of going, but does anybody have a preference either way?
I like the backstop idea, paid at the end of the year.
But that at least gives Jim the comfort of knowing that we support it, and we're just waiting to the end of the year to find out what the final number is.
Yep.
Tim, any concern with that?
No, that's all fine. No, and we'll just, I'll keep you posted, and let's hope that it doesn't happen. I hope we don't need it.
Well, why don't we do a motion and then we can discuss it? So do we have a motion for advisory to commit to backstop the town clerk budget for miscellaneous contracted services to cover the overage due to the payment to iMedia for the March town meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, seeing none. Marcy,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and Andrew is aye. So there you go, Jim.
All right, thanks. Hey, listen, all kidding aside, I'm going up to Holy Cross for this citizens CPTC on planning and zoning. It's mostly zoning and people involved in that, but it's, if any of it is interested in attending, it's only $95 for the day. It's an excellent series of things on zoning rules, 40B, what pitfalls to avoid. It really give you an insight into how the whole ZBA and planning world works. It's highly recommended. If anybody's interested, I'll be happy to send you literature. I've gone to a couple of these over the years, and it's really helpful.
Please send that literature, especially with the announcement from, I guess, this morning. I'm definitely interested in that. So
Sure. Yep. I'll get it right over to you.
thank you.
Hey, Jim, why don't you just send it around to advisory? I'd love to take a look. It doesn't hurt for everybody to have the info.
Will do. All
Awesome. Thanks, Jim.
right. Thank you, folks. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
All right. Let's see. Where are we at? So are we comfortable now voting the budget? I think I am.
I am.
Yes.
So is there a motion for advisory to support the FY24 budget in the amount for the grand total of the operational amount of $58,296,601?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion, seeing none. Marcy,
Aye.
Howard,
Aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
Andrew is aye. Okay. Well, good job, guys. That's the largest part of our job. It's another good year down on that. We'll hold off on water enterprise, and we talked about holding off on breakneck at least till our next meeting, if not the meeting on the 25th. Do we want to vote on Algonquin, or does anybody want to hear from them again, or
We have-
CPC?
So there are two things, Andrew, maybe you have. Do we have more information on whether or not we're able to bond it as Southborough as opposed to the region in terms of the credit ratings?
I did get some information from Mr. Ballantyne in terms of the rates, and it was around what I had quoted, about 30 basis point different. We could bond it that way. I think we'd have to do an IMA for it. But again, right now we're talking, the article in front of us is that Southborough wouldn't be bonding it, right? Algonquin would be bonding it. We would do 250,000 in CPA funds, and the rest would go through the normal, allocation methodology. It would be under, region to do the bond.
250,000 for CPA, and the rest of the balance is how much?
I think it's around 2.75. It's a little around $3 million total for Southborough's allocation. Right. I mean, and the percentages change every year depending on. So what we're authorizing is a $7 million spend.
Yeah.
That'll be bonded, and then the debt service will get allocated based upon the past 4 years rolling average, percentages.
And there's no way to structure this with, if we wanted to up the CPA to 3% and we wanted to bond it as a town, there's no way to do that and maintain the school's timetable. Is that correct?
So, and that was something I've been asking and trying to collect more information on. And I think there's a possibility. And what I mean by that is, for I believe the next 2 years, they're planning on doing a short-term bond and then going out for a permanent bond at that point in time. I believe there's a chance that at that time, we could do an IMA with Northborough that says, when we do the permanent bond, Southborough wants to basically pay our whole chunk up front, right? And then we'll bond it ourselves through CPA. But basically between now and then, we'd have the opportunity to get the 3% increase and have more bonding capacity. I think there's a chance to do that.
Okay.
I ran it through, town accountant who seems to think that, but again, it would have to go, double check with the coalition, and it would have to go through CPC, and there's a lot of pieces, but I think there's at least a chance, which was my big hang up on this project. I want to be able to use that 3% if it is approved. Sounds like there's a possibility. I don't want to guarantee anything, right? None of that's written in stone that we could do that. But it sounds like there's a possibility.
Okay. No, it sounds like an interesting compromise you're looking at. And I know the school they're very eager to move forward with their timetable. So
it's kind of a little bit of the best of both worlds. I mean, we may get there and then, we find out that the legality of CPC, there's no way you could do that, but I can't see where in the bylaw or in the regulation that it would have that. So I think there's a chance. Personally, I was really not wanting to vote on this unless there was a possibility that if we did get a 3% surcharge, that we could use it for this project. And I think there's certainly some more projects that we could use a 3% too. So it's not just this one.
But hold off for a vote another week until we possibly get more information, or
yeah, let's do that. Let's I don't know if we'll get a final legal opinion that it's going to be certainly 100% okay, but I would settle for 75%. We think we're good here, because I think the project should move forward. It just would make me feel a lot better on voting for it, knowing that we could have a possibility to get some match and save the town taxpayers some money when we permanent bond it.
yeah, I think we all agree it should move forward. But you're right, like you said, we're trying to do the best for the town. So
Yeah, so we'll pass that one off. I also think I was doing some research on CPA projects in the coalition database, and I remember seeing one for open space that was paying for hazardous remediation. So I do wonder whether or not the Breakneck Hill project was another one that could be done for. But again, there are a lot of projects that could use a 3% increase, but that was another one that I was curious to whether or not it would be able to be used, but CPC hasn't vetted any of that or anyone with any authority, just me doing some research. Let's hold off on the CPA ones for next meeting. I'll see if we can have Mr. Mills or CPC join us to discuss those. Hopkinton IMA, let's just wait to get the correct language there. But again, the article there is to support something to basically allow us to right now to read a report. So supporting the article doesn't concern me, so that we can have a separate discussion if we support the project. But the article isn't really in support of the project. The article's just something to say, do we authorize the cost or the independent audit?
It was the cost of the independent audit
Right.
that would then get reimbursed upon. So we have to outlay. That's all it was.
But I think we just need to kind of understand the backstory of it and why it's there is to really get the sense and let people vote on it. So it's a little bit, this might be one that we want to just keep it at town meeting and not really vote, because we're not really voting on the article, we're voting on the substance behind the article, really. The tree bylaw, I don't know if anybody's, so we did, Marcy, Tim and myself were able to at least watch the select board meeting last night when planning board came to talk about that. I was hoping that we didn't need planning board to come to talk about that in scenic roads, but if anybody wants to have them come to review it, we could certainly do that at the next meeting.
I want to at least go back and review the selectmen meeting that I haven't had the chance to watch the tape yet. So
Yeah, so we could postpone it for us to review, but do we want to have, why don't we have Mimi come to our next meeting? If she can. And then,
Well, do people think they're going to have questions on it?
I mean, I got my questions out last night. I don't know, Tim, Marcy, if you had any more that you wanted
I'm
to.
all set on it. I understand people who didn't attend aren't ready to vote, but that I just don't want to drag it out to yet another meeting unless we've got a lot of discussion with it.
I
And
was
again,
there last night. I don't have any questions. I just need to read it again. I haven't read it.
Yeah, I
again.
mean, the alternative is they do still have their planning board still has their open hearing on it. So if
Right.
anybody has any questions, they can attend the planning board and ask them directly there. So why don't we do that? If people read it and have questions, they can reach out. I mean, you can also just reach out to Mimi directly and get your questions answered, but why don't we plan on not having to have them come? Because I don't think there's that many outstanding questions.
again, if it was covered at the selectmen meeting last night, watching the tape should cover
Okay,
majority of it, I think. So
so we'll just plan on voting on it on a future meeting, but not that we need to invite anybody in particular. I haven't read the zoning bylaw change, but Marcy, did you catch the part on that? I think they talked about it in planning. It sounded pretty innocuous and not terrible, but unless we want Melissa to come and explain it to us, it didn't sound like it was.
Yeah, can someone explain what that? I tried to read it and
It's
like I couldn't even tell what I was reading.
it has something to do with like to comply with something with the DEP, we had to make a small change to our zoning bylaw and stormwater management thing and the floodplain. I don't understand it well enough to explain it, and I'm certainly not doing a good job now. It didn't sound like it was anything too cumbersome, but I'm happy to ask Melissa to come to explain it to us. She did a good job in I think it was a planning meeting to explain it, but I didn't understand it well enough to explain it to you guys.
That might be good. I guess I missed that, Andrew. I don't know. I don't remember
I'm
it.
trying to remember. I'm not sure which meeting it was. Select board or planning or one of the meetings I watched that she talked about it. I asked Owen to come tonight. He couldn't make it, but he said he could make another Wednesday in March. So I'll have him come to our next one. One thing I asked town council is if this would be able to be amended to add in non-citizens, but that are over 17 years old. So right now, if you're a green card holder, you're not allowed to vote. He said it's not within the four corners of that article. You could always do another article later, but he didn't seem to think that was warranted. But I always thought that was unfortunate that green card holders pay taxes and can't vote in local elections.
I'm curious to see the rationale of the extra year. So
But yeah, we'll talk to Owen. The business district change from David Perry in terms of what he's looking to do on Woodland and Route 9 there. Does anybody want to have David come to discuss that, or are we ready to vote on that one?
we just want to wait till town meeting for that one and let him make his.
Yeah, I mean, select board's at town meeting, so I think it was kind of waiting to see what town meeting had to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
We could do the same.
I would do the same. I would recommend doing the same personally.
Okay.
But, that's up to everyone.
Does everybody agree with that? All right.
Yeah, I read it, but I wasn't quite sure on all the details. So
Sure,
there's
Mr. Perry will have a presentation. So
there is the two Peter Lapine citizens petitions for the driver feedback sign and the budget increase to pay for them. I don't know if people are ready to vote on those or want to discuss them. And I can give you, my take, and I emailed Peter back after he sent us his article is one, it's usually around $9,000 or $10,000 when we install a sign, so 18,000 isn't going to pay for three. The select board last night basically said, this article is it's not binding, right? And it's within the select board's purview to do these things. They want to wait for the new DPW director before they committed to anything, and they wanted to vet the multiple other streets that have also requested, driver feedback signs, and prioritize those.
aren't there already driver feedback signs on?
There are.
On Parkerville.
There are, and
Speed bumps and
speed
sidewalks.
bumps, and the speed limit was just reduced.
Right. So
No, that's part of their discussion is this the best place for those? So I personally don't support it as it's written. I also think that these types of articles that are non-binding, are I'd rather people come to the committees themselves and bring it up, as opposed to kind of taking up time at town meeting when we are trying to be as efficient as possible. The town did apply for a few driver feedback signs last year in the shared streets grant, but we were denied because they weren't approving any grants until the park was done, which is another reason why I really want to vote to get that thing done. So my thought there is I don't support it because I don't think this is the avenue to do these citizens petitions. Like, to get this accomplished is a conversation with select board or the DPW or with advisory, right? But I think making it a citizen petition is a little bit excessive and cumbersome. So I would vote just basis on basically not applicable, because it's non-binding, and ask them to select board's purview and talk about maybe getting a grant for some of these signs and not spending taxpayer dollars and really prioritizing these signs where they're most effective. But I'm happy to delay a vote if people want to hear from Peter.
I can read the article. I mean, I think it's pretty self-explanatory what they want, and they just want to add more signage. Right. So
Yeah, I mean, I'll put them up.
yeah, I have it. Just
But it's basically install 3 driver feedback signs with a 25 mile an hour, how you say, like it has to be 25 on Parkerville North, and then add $18,000 to the select door budget to cover the cost of the signs.
Yeah, I'm gonna vote against this just by policy.
Yeah.
I'm not even gonna consider it. This is something that should have gone before the select board. This is no business. This is not town meeting's business.
Anybody else okay voting on it? Okay. Why don't we do them both together? Is there a motion for advisory to support Article 36 and 37 as printed in the 3-1 draft warrant?
So moved.
There a second?
Second,
Roll call vote. Tim,
Nay.
Adam,
Hmm.
you can abstain too, or we can discuss
Yeah.
it more if you want to discuss it.
Yeah, I'm gonna abstain for now.
I'm okay with more discussion. I can retract my vote. If you want to talk about it more.
Adam, you good sticking with abstain, or you want to talk more?
we can do it next
I-
week too. I mean, if you.
Yeah.
Let's pull it back and we can do it next week, so.
Yeah, or we can, why don't we continue voting it, and if it's, turned down or voted, then we can revote.
We can vote
Howard,
next week anyway. I'm nay.
Marcy,
Nay.
Nay.
and Andrew is a nay. So why don't we just leave it as 401?
No,
Sorry,
No.
No.
Oh,
Zero-
4-1.
zero, zero,
4-1, yeah, sorry.
And again, these are just our going to the vote. We can look at this again next week, Adam, with that. If
Yeah, I
you-
guess I want to drive down the road.
Okay, yeah, we can revote it, yeah, but at least we
So,
have
that's all.
something there.
I'm gonna put it in your head, and obviously you do as you see fit, but you shouldn't be spending your time driving down the road or researching something that's completely out of our purview or town meeting's purview. Right, spend that time with your family.
That's
something
that's
stuck.
fair. That's fair. Yeah, I guess where I've gotten, I guess more on principle, and I get, if it's under our purview, fine. I feel like I've jumped to conclusions on past votes without trying to see the perspective of it. So that's all. This is kind of a silly one, I guess, but
Well, then make sure you take the family for the drive so you get. the family
Yeah.
time with it, okay? So-
exactly.
Okay, and the next warrant one we have is Ms. Fanis one, basically to require emergency, blah, blah, blah.
She wants to get rid of the regional,
Yeah, it's basically to cease and desist any
yeah.
talk about the regional center.
Mhm.
Again, non-binding, it's to see if the town, or to ask the select board, basically.
I mean, I'd like to point out that the very fact that it says direct the select board is going to cause the attorney general to immediately reject it, no matter what we vote. This is an illegal petition.
If we're voting policy for the last two, wouldn't the same policy apply here?
I agree with you.
I think so. I mean, it's
I
within their
understand why
purview.
they're bringing all of these, it's non-binding is to make a point to make people aware. But again, do we spend our time with something non-binding? For the same reason as the other
Yeah.
one, doesn't matter, it doesn't belong here. It should be at a selectman meeting, et cetera, but I understand why she's doing it to get the awareness, so.
Yeah, I mean, and on both of these, you can vote for the substance. I didn't think the other one made sense. I don't think that putting them at Parkerville, one, for the wrong cost,
And they're already there.
and they're already there, made sense. This one, you could say, I agree with her sentiment. I don't want to do the regional thing. or you could say, I don't think this should exist as a warrant article. I want to turn it down on that basis, right? I think you could go either way with this one. Right? You can do it on the substance of the article or on the fact that it's a non-binding and we just don't want to see those, right? So I think you can go either way on why you're voting against it. We should discuss that, kind of why
Or
we're
for it, right? It's-
Yeah, I mean, I personally am very for regionalization. I don't necessarily know or know whether or not this process we're doing is the right one. But I don't want to, I think that the select board is down a path. They haven't fully committed to it, right? They still have to June to back out. They're still trying to see what the state would give us for funding. But to direct the select board to stop doing anything from regionalization, I don't think is a good idea. I think they should continue down the path and look at more options. And if it's one with Grafton and Westboro, or it's joining another regional center, I think regionalization makes a lot of sense, and I don't want to stop them from doing their work. So I would vote it down just because I think on the basis of, one, it's a non-binding. I don't think we should have these. And two, I actually think that we should be looking at regionalization, and I don't want to tell the select board, even though we can't technically direct them to do anything. I don't want to instruct them or give them guidance that we don't agree that regionalization, because I think regionalization should occur. That makes any sense.
It makes sense. I haven't dug deep enough into what they were working on. I agree with the regionalization. It makes sense. With a town of 10,000 people, I think there's a better way to use our resources. Sharing them and share that cost with other towns. Again, I like you said, I don't know if the path they're going down is right, only because I have not studied that enough. But so I would. But again, I don't like the non-binding. This should have been at the select. You could erase this at the meeting rather than here. So
rather than wasting everybody's time.
well, again, I get the point of bringing the town meeting and the audience you get from that, and the certain factions that get riled up have a new cause if you do it here, and it grows feet that way. I get the reason why they do it. Just do we want to support that at the same time? So
I guess I don't understand the reason here though. Like, why are we telling the select board to cease and desist any regionalization effort without even knowing what the proposal looks like? Something like, in 5 years from now, it could be very different than today. I don't understand.
I mean, it's a non-binding. They can't tell the select board what to do. It's completely within their purview.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, right.
Yeah. But the select board, they do have a IMA or MOI, or they have something that they've signed basically with Grafton and Westboro to look at doing a site in Westboro to hold regionalization, and they have an agreement and there's documentation in there. Part of the concern people have is the site is an old, kind of like a toxic site. I mean, it's supposed to be cleaned up, but still concerned about having, people work there all day. So I think they were getting, was it today, Marcy, that they're supposed to get an EPA report or something?
I believe so. I think that's what was
To
mentioned.
kind
last
of
night.
dump, belt and suspenders. They have I think 2 or 3 reports that say the site is clean, but I think the town asked for a fourth one. But again, I turn it down because I don't like the wording that it's just, any regionalization efforts. It's not the current one that they've done. It's any efforts. And I would say,
well, I think it's obvious, and I think from hearing it from Ms. Fano's mouth that there's a strong opinion to keep those dispatchers local. And
Yeah.
I think the reason that it says it's worded the way it is because they have a strong opinion. Whether you agree with that or not, that dispatching should be done in town for the town, and there's an advantage to having it done locally or regionally.
I mean, I'm planning on voting against this just because I think regionalization is a good idea. Same
again, I
same
think-
goes for the next one. So that's basically how I'm voting, or my thought process here.
And my part, cost wise for the town, again, our purview, whether financially, I think the joint it works is better the regionalization actually is probably more cost effective over time.
There's a very significant cost savings by doing regionalization.
And I don't
And
think it
in
cuts down
theory, you get
performance.
more coverage, right? You get more dispatchers covering your town, but I'm not gonna,
Which we've had a problem getting dispatchers lately, right? And which over time, so, again, from this board's purview, forget personal opinion, whatever, I think from what our job is, that's why I would vote against it too, so.
all right, do people want to vote or do we feel that we should have Bonnie come in and discuss it? I think I'm ready to vote.
I'm ready.
Wait, which one are you talking about?
Article 39, Bonnie's.
That's not Bonnie's.
Bonnie 38.
38.
Bonnie's 38.
Okay,
38.
sorry, I have it scrolled wrong.
So we're talking about 39. I think we skipped Bonnie's.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, sorry, 39, which is Kyle DeVincent, Kyle and Keith Wittes.
I understand, I thought that was.
They're very similar.
So what was one?
This article would serve to keep the emergency dispatch under the sole control of Southborough. So this is basically to kill the regionalization efforts. And then, sorry, Bonnie's was to see if the town will vote against the agreement.
Option to withdraw without penalty from the intermunicipal agreement. For Metro. Region-
Bonnie's is more specific to the agreement that's on the table right
That's
now.
on now,
Correct.
yeah. And it doesn't have vote to request, it's more, the language is more to what you would expect, so.
Correct, but basically we have before now in June 1st to exit withdrawal without penalty. And so Bonnie's basically saying what the second one, Article 39, is asking to withdraw from it post haste. So they both are in effect doing the same thing.
Although 39 goes farther, 38 is this agreement now, 39 says.
Correct. 39 says
no
forever and
agreement
ever.
Yeah,
The only reason you might want to consider 38 is if you believe that the specific agreement that Bonnie references, if you feel that agreement is a usurpation of town meeting's appropriation power, then you might make an argument that it's a relevant article.
and again, for me, I have not read through the whole IMA or anything to understand what's going on, so maybe we hold 38 for a week,
Yep.
just to let us get a little clearer, or maybe even bring Bonnie in for it, but 39,
Yeah.
that one,
I think that makes sense. I think, Tim, you're making a good point. So maybe we ask Bonnie if she can come next week and talk about 38 and then people can read up on it. I think there's a couple good My Southborough articles on it that explain it pretty well. And then 39 is just basically a blanket shutting the door, which I don't agree with. And I think I'm okay to vote on that one.
so hold 38, bring Bonnie and vote 39, is that?
I think that's my thought. Anybody have an objection to that?
No objection.
Is there a motion for advisory to support Article 39 as written in the draft warrant of 3-1?
So moved.
Second. All right, Marcy,
Nay.
Howard,
Nay.
Adam,
Yay.
Tim,
Nay.
Andrew is nay. All right, 050. That was this one. Okay. All right, we're working our way down. The next one is from Patty Fiore, and my understanding is this is basically asking the Public Works Planning Board, which is done by, I think, a special act, so it's not, in a town bylaw, to have the request of that be changed from 5 members, 3 of which are appointed by the moderator and 2 from the planning board, changed to 5 members, with 4 being from the planning board and 1 being from the health department, which I guess she's gonna amended on town meeting floor to say Board of Health instead of Health Department.
Is everybody familiar with the history on this article?
No.
No.
Okay, so I don't know, Andrew, do you want to give the history or do you want me to?
Why don't you? You probably know better than I do.
I can give a brief history. The Department of Public Works, as mentioned, has a significant number of members appointed by the town moderator. The town moderator does not appoint the chair, as you might expect. The town moderator simply appoints people, and the people get together, they meet like we do, and they elect their own chair, and any other roles that are appropriate. This board did that, and there is a current chair. That chair has refused to meet for a long time. The chair has refused to set an agenda or to call a meeting. And I mean, there are meetings, with the select board where you can really watch them, get into it. The town moderator was there. The chair of this board was there, and, they talked about it quite extensively. The petition, before this petition came forward, there was a strong attempt made to influence the appointing authorities to remove said members who refused to call meetings. And that influence did not work because the appointing authority made that decision, as is within that appointing authority's authority, whether you agree with it or not. So that is how we got to this warrant article, which is seeking to pull that appointing authority away from the current office and move it to other boards where more success may be obtained. And that's probably as much as I want to get into it tonight.
Tim, I think there's another important point here, maybe,
Okay.
that Patty is someone who filed a complaint with the Attorney General's office because this board also didn't file meeting minutes for
Yes.
years.
Yes, that's a good point. And I also don't want to, I don't want anybody to get the impression that I
Right.
fall on one side or the other about whether or not
Right.
they should be meeting or what their business should be.
Right. I
just
think
want
it's
people
important to know, though, that that's why Patty, I believe, is, and she could come speak to us, I suppose, about this, but that is well documented, I think, and I think even myself did an article on that recently, that they've now come to the table, I think, to vote on minutes, and they had a recent meeting. So again, I think you're right, Tim, not to call anything right or wrong, but I think that was part of the impetus.
Yep. And I, in the select board meeting, Chelsea mentioned that the Board of Health hasn't taken this up. They did not request to be an appointing authority. They've never appointed. So they're going to talk about it in their meeting. They're kind of shocked about why are we involved in this. So for me on that alone of, you haven't, it doesn't sound like it's been vetted with the people that they're looking to give appointment authority to. I have some concerns with that. I also don't, I actually think that the split between a moderator and planning board makes sense in this and for this committee. I don't think the planning board and the health department should decide who's overseeing Department of Public Works. I don't think that's the right committees, but I just think it makes more sense, even moderator, select board, etc. But that's neither here nor there. But we can vote on it as it stands. I was maybe thinking of making this at town meeting because it needs to be amended anyway. And we should vote on the amended article. That's really going to be amended on the floor versus this. But we can always have Patty come in and speak to it, and if we ask any questions we have, or if we wanted Chelsea or the health department, Board of Health to opine on whether or not they even want appointing authority, we could do that as well. But what do you guys think?
At minimum, wait till town meeting so we can hear what's going on. If we have time to bring everyone in. I think our next meeting, we've got a few people we wanted to bring in, so.
Yeah, I think at least, either we can watch the Board of Health meeting, or, I might watch that section of it, and I can report back on what they said and what their thoughts were. I mean, if Board of Health says, I don't want this appointing authority, then I feel very comfortable voting against it. Right. That's
Select
a
board
big
vote for this
linchpin for
last
me.
night?
Sorry.
Did select board vote on this last night?
Let's see.
I don't think they did, right? Doesn't look like it.
No.
Okay.
They- No, but I think they were going to have Patty come in and talk about it. So, I mean, we can also watch
might
that
be
meeting with
helpful.
her.
Yeah.
So I think
I'll
let's
do
just
that.
make this probably at town meeting. And we can, if we find enough information to vote on it next week, if not, just do it on the 25th. The
I mean,
two,
do you really want to dig into all the history of this item? Because it's kind of like the St. Mark's one. There's a lot of back and forth and animosity, and angry people. And if you focus on just the merit of the article, you might come to a different conclusion than if you focus on the history of the case.
yeah, but I mean, for me, I'm trying to be fair to how we just did it for the St. Mark's article.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm just making a statement. I'm not trying to.
Yeah, that's why for me, it's like if
course,
the
yeah.
appointing authority is the Board of Health and the Planning Board, and it comes out that neither the Planning Board nor the Board of Health wants to be the appointing authority, I really can't support this. Right, on the face of it, but I think we need to find out that information. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, makes sense.
The next two are from Heidi Davis. And I think I don't really know the history. I kind of heard a little bit in the select board meeting, but I think she was instrumental in the town's 5G policy. So I think this is kind of an elaboration on that. I'm just reading it now.
Not to be obtrusive while you're reading it, but this is, to me, another thing that could have gone directly to the select board.
Yeah, but I think it's something that it's the select board policy that would have to be amended. Again, I don't think this is binding. And to be honest, after reading it, I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, I understand, but I don't understand what a setback of 1,640 feet would mean to any of us.
According to this, that's what whatever the study she's referencing says
Yeah.
that's the minimum setback, but
Does that mean like, okay, if we increase the minimum setback and our houses are within 1,640 feet of a 5G small cell, because a lot of them are on the telephone poles, I think. That we need to, my house is no longer compliant and I can't do
No, I
certain
think it's-
things or.
I think they're saying that you can't locate a 5G cell within 640 feet of a property. That's why I'm reading that.
I mean, this is kind of another one of those non-binding ones. Do we want to actually understand it and vote on it on the substance, or just vote on it?
And I'm
based on-
assuming there's going to be a presentation at town meeting.
Do we want to have Heidi come and do a presentation directly to us, or do we want to make this at town meeting and listen to what she has to say, listen to the discussion, and then vote?
My opinion on, the whole policy thing, wasting our time.
So with Tim's, I think I would say at town meeting and just.
I would say some town meeting too. I mean, I don't know enough about what it means to vote on it.
Okay.
It may be important, but
And I think that she's planning on coming to the select board, so people
yeah, I'll
can
listen
also
on that.
Yeah, then let's
listen
watch
in on that.
that. Again, I'm just worried about if our next, we only have a meeting, maybe two before.
Yeah, I don't wanna-
If
I'm
we're
trying
inviting
not to
everyone
s-
in, we're never, the next meeting is gonna be
Exactly.
the longest meeting in history, so.
Yeah, so I think, I think let's try to do stuff offline and then we can do at town meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Andrew, sorry, can you just remind me, like, how does this end up on the warrant?
So what will happen is the ones that are voted on. We'll say like advisory recommendation. I'm trying to find one where the select board voted on. I think they voted on some of the early ones.
Like the one that we were just
They're up
looking
top.
at, like Article 41.
So like here, like select board support 5-0. This is one of the consent agenda ones, so it'll say advisory recommendation support 5-0.
No, I know. So my question is like, how does Article 41 end up on the warrant?
It's
With
citizen
certain number of
petitions.
signatures.
That's all, like.
You need
that's
you
all
need
it
10
is.
signatures. That's it. Right. I mean, any of us could go and do 100 of these.
Yeah,
Well,
so, I mean, this is why I'm starting to dig in on a policy, because we're getting more and more citizen petitions,
Yeah.
and people are just doing normal select board business in town meeting where it just doesn't belong, and it's only gonna get worse.
I agree with Tim here. I mean, these should be, they are at the end, obviously, but again, to tell people to come back to town meeting from 7 to 11 p.m. and possibly a second day so that we can do this kind of stuff is, it's kind of.
I mean, I have no problem voting on it, and if we want to vote on it based upon the basis that this should not be in the town, in the town meeting. I'll also happily take that vote if you want to take it.
Yeah, I'm with Tim.
I'm just as happy to put it at town meeting if we're gonna hear it anyway and try to learn more before we vote and not even waste any more time on it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be on the screen, so it's not necessary that we necessarily have to have it in today. We really needed to have the budget so that we could put the budget in the warrant. But the other ones, I mean, it's good to have it in the printed one, but most people are going to look on the screen.
Right.
All right. So, do you want to just do at town meeting and just or vote on it next week if we find out more information,
Please.
or do we want to?
Yeah.
Or Tim, feel free to make we can vote it now. All right, I'll leave it as that town meeting. And then the next two are from David Perry. The first one's this 43 is an interesting one. Why doesn't everybody take a second and just read it if you have it? Let me know when you guys are done.
Is that even in our purview?
I mean, we can audit, but Howard, I think before you joined, we had done a pretty sizable, basically almost had one entire meeting on this topic, and we looked at it. That's where Kathy talked about bringing up the image of the puddles and going line by line on the concerns, which is the same concerns that David had here. As far as I'm concerned, we've investigated it. We all found that there were some missteps and poor communication and things that could have been done better. I personally did not find any fraudulent, criminal, whatever you want to call it, misuse of funds, You know, anytime that there was a concern about, building on private land, DOT approved it. They knew what we were doing. They knew that we had a license agreement. We were trying to get an easement, and now we're trying to get a land swap. So the Attorney General already, I believe, investigated this as well because there was other complaints. So I don't see the need for advisory to do any further investigation. I think this is an absolute one where I'm ready to vote it down right now. Advisory, I mean, the select board voted it down 0-5. That it just doesn't belong in town meeting. It's frivolous. It's a problem, and
Yeah.
I don't want to give it any more fuel or validity by doing anything other than voting on it. But well, I'm curious to see what everybody else thinks.
I'm ready to vote on it as well.
Andrew, I agree that a lot has been done. I also do take very seriously a citizen petition that's asking advisory to do something related to the finances of the town and come to town meeting with a report of that. Is that might not be this one, it might be the next one. I'm sorry if I'm looking at.
That's this one. It is 34
Is
that
this
asks
one?
them to
Okay.
report back to town meeting. And my thought process is we haven't talked about it yet, but in our letter, I anticipate that we will talk about the investigations that we did on this project, where we stand, how we all feel about it, what's transpired, similar to the select board, right? So,
Letter is that you mean? I might not know what you mean.
so at town meeting, there's always a report that advisory does,
I see what you mean. Okay.
right? So it's like a multi-page, printout that we hand out that says, this is what's happening in the warrant. This is how we voted. So, it's got a lot of narrative. So I think certainly like I definitely want to talk about the St. Mark's Park project and the history and what we voted on or how we feel. And everybody, contributes to the recent reports. So I think that satisfies it. I just, if it was simply, we would like it to, advisory to look into this and report back to the town, I would be probably more inclined to vote in favor of it. But the other pieces of, that are in here just go beyond that scope that I'm comfortable voting on.
Yeah. I mean, I understand that point. I wonder if it's not, entirely off the table that advisory should have a meeting with Mr. Perry, given his level of public voiced concerns over the financing of this project, and we are the finance committee. I'm not sure this is the right place for it, and I understand everybody's thoughts too about it's got a lot of airtime. I think just for me personally, I have a hard time ignoring a citizen of the town requesting assistance from advisory to look into something.
And I agree, but I think that we have looked into it.
I have a different opinion.
Sure, Tim, what is your thoughts?
I guess my only question is, to me, just cut you off for 1 second. Is this the right forum? Right. You could have come to us as
I
an
understand.
advisory, sent the order to us and said, hey, look into this. Would you, bringing it as a calling us out on the mat at town meeting is not necessarily the most productive forum to get that done, is my only comment.
I would agree with that, Howard, but I'm also going to reiterate that we are not an oversight board.
Mhm.
If oversight is what the citizen wants, then the citizen should propose that town meeting create an ad hoc committee to do oversight, or even a standing committee to do oversight. We're advisory. We look at the budget. We look at warrant articles. We can get access to books and operations, but that's in pursuit of our primary responsibilities. And we pursue our responsibilities in partnership with the executive function of the town. The moment we become oversight and we create an adversarial relationship with the select board or the schools or any other elected board, we can't do our jobs in the future. And it would be a critical error for us to become an oversight committee. I mean, let town meeting create a new board to do that function.
We're not an audit committee. I know he references the fact that we have the ability to investigate the books, accounts, management of any department of the town. So does any citizen in this country, or anybody in this country, right? Our authority is the same authority granted to a public records request.
So for clarity, what you're saying, Tim, is that we simply approve budgets, but we don't investigate anything.
So if there was, take for example, the bylaw before us for the Hopkinton Water, right?
Yeah.
We could go talk to anybody. We could ask for any document, right? Either through a Freedom of Information request or through the town's own bylaw, right? We could go anywhere and get any kind of information, talk to anybody, and pretty much do whatever we wanted, okay? But that would be in pursuit of our function, which is to provide advice to town meeting on an article coming before them, right, in the warrant. It's not in our charter to look back historically, right, and do that audit or do that oversight and try to find malfeasance. There is no oversight function at the town level. It doesn't exist. It's not in the state constitution. And even I suggested earlier that he go ahead and have town meeting create a new committee to do this, and that's fine. That would be something that he could do, and town meeting could create it. But they, as Andrew said, their ability to get information would be limited to Freedom of Information requests. It would be no different than the citizen doing it himself.
Thank you, Tim. I know you have a lot of years experience here, so I appreciate that.
But I understand where you're coming from too. It's I don't know if it's in the name, Finance Committee, Advisory Committee, but I do worry about, if we create that oversight, relationship with other boards, it's going to cost us in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we're not an audit, right? We don't have audit or compliance or operational risk oversight.
Yeah, the state has always envisioned that if there is some sort of problem, the citizen either goes to the Attorney General in the state or simply elects new officers. And it is interesting because we have a select board race coming up with 2 wide open positions. And anybody in town who wants a drastic change in how the town is operated has a golden opportunity to put forth a couple of candidates and completely change the nature of the select board.
All right. I think we can. Is there a motion for advisory committee to support Article 43 as written in the draft warrant?
So moved.
For a second. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none. Tim,
Nay.
Adam,
Nay.
Howard,
Nay.
Marcy,
Nay.
and Andrew is nay. The next, which kind of goes against the vote we've already taken, is to basically, why doesn't everybody take a second and just read it if they haven't read it yet?
I mean, wouldn't it be ironic if the others passed and this one passed too?
Again, I don't know if this one is binding. I don't think so. I mean, I think for me in the explanation, a lot of the things that he's talking about like parking lot, the town should not be building it. If the bylaw, if it passes, the MOU states that the town will not be using public funds to build a parking lot, right? So I think a lot of things he lists in here have been refuted, and I was in favor of doing the park, so I would vote to turn this down. Any other?
Well, even 3, right? So we're not using public funds to build the private parking lot.
Correct.
So
Well,
We were.
we're not now. All right. So
Once,
not-
well, once the MOU is signed, technically it hasn't been signed yet. And we weren't building a parking lot. We were grading and putting down some gravel. So I define a parking lot as with lines and asphalt and curbing and
again, I think this goes to the fact that there are very few people who claim that no mistakes were made, right? Mistakes were made.
mistakes were made. There's no doubt about it. So,
Let's
how do we
move
move
on.
forward?
but at the same point, every person that's made the mistake is a volunteer doing the best they can to bring this forth too. But yes, mistakes were made and they should have known better. And but again, from what we said before, the best financial move for the town is to build a park. So
Financial, and I think I would prefer to have a park than to have a pile of dirt and nothing.
and have to pay to remove the pile of dirt. I agree with you
Exactly,
again, but again, but from our purview as a financial board, yeah. Okay.
All right. I think I want to vote on this. So is there a motion for advisory to support Article 44 as written in the draft warrant?
So moved.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, seeing none. Marcy,
Nay.
Howard,
Nay.
Adam,
Nay.
Tim,
Nay.
and Andrew is nay. All right. Woohoo, we made it to the end of the warrant. So just to recap,
What's the thing under it? And to notify the inhabitants of all precincts and towns. Is that on
there's
yours?
I think that's the wrap up of the warrant.
Okay.
oh, in the warrant, oh, sorry.
That.
And yeah, I think it's just the wrap up is basically they put it on the screen, I think, to talk about the elected polls.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's something they usually put in there.
All right. Sorry.
Yeah, so it's not a voting thing. It's just say, hey, by the way, this is what's coming up in the town election. We can vote on it if we want to.
The language didn't make any sense. I didn't know what it was. That's all.
So it's basically showing like, oh, there's 1 planning board seat and 2
This
select
is
board
what's up.
seats. and
Okay. Yeah.
Blah blah blah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'll send out a invite for the 8th, and I will try to schedule everybody that we can. I don't know what the SAP is looking like with the personnel board. If there's any substantive changes that we need to talk about, I haven't heard anything major.
You don't have a sneak preview for us?
I don't. There might be one in the warrant. I don't know, but I'll talk to Barry and see what we need to do there. So I think it's personnel, budget we voted on, water. I think we just need the final numbers there. We can vote on it. Breakneck Hill, we certainly need to look at that and understand if it's going to be postponed or not. I don't think any of us have an issue if they say it can be postponed till fall. Does anybody have an issue with not postponing it to the fall? Algonquin, yeah, I'll try to find out and see if I can clarify more of whether or not CPC would be a possibility if we did get to a 3% by the time we bonded it. I'll try to clarify that. Hopkinton IMA, you guys are going to research that a little bit more. Tree maintenance fund. We didn't really talk about that one. That's basically the set of money that they were gonna put aside to do the trees, which goes hand in hand with the tree bylaw, so. It's kind of part of it.
Can that one stand by its own? I don't know. I have to read it again.
It's its own article. But I think
I
it's,
could
it's part-
see.
I think
could
it's-
see the tree- Go ahead.
yeah, sorry, I was gonna say, I think as part of the tree bylaw. They talk about having a tree fund.
I'm wondering if one could pass, if the tree fund could pass without the bylaw passing.
I think it could, and that's why they have it after, one after the other, so they could definitely postpone it if needed. Or maybe we still want the tree fund, I don't know.
I'd rather, the tree fund, I think, has value as we're cutting down 10 years with, I don't know if you've been around town lately, they're cutting down all the dead trees from that they've been postponing for 3 years, and something has to pay for that. We did that as a special article last town meeting. If that was a permanent thing, I think would be a good thing, regardless if the bylaw passes or not, because again, the bylaw
Yep.
discussed is just regurgitating state law. So,
Yeah, we'll hold off on that one because they still don't have a summary or the actual dollars amount. So,
okay.
But yeah, I mean, that could be an ad town meeting. I don't think that one's going to be too much of a, maybe to Howard, to your point, it's, if it doesn't pass and we still want to have our own fund, great.
Right.
If it doesn't pass and we don't, then, it's relatively not a lot of moving parts to that one. Scenic roads, you guys are gonna take a look. We'll bring, I'll see if Melissa can join. Let's see if Owen said he could join already. David will wait till town meeting. Ask Bonnie to join. And I think that's it. I don't think we needed anybody else to join, right?
Yep, we voted the rest, and
The other ones, I think we were just gonna kind of, I was gonna ask CPC on the CPC ones, just to give them an opportunity. Might just be Andrew Mills or somebody, but if they want to come and present it. I think that's enough to make up a meeting.
1, 2, yep.
Awesome. Was there anything else in the agenda? That any other business properly brought forth? Anybody else have anything else? Seeing none, is there any participants left? Negative. So any public comment? No, there's not. Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Right, Marcy,
Aye.
Howard,
aye.
Adam,
Aye.
Jim,
I.
Andrew is aye. Thank you all so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Good
Have a
night.
good night.